So 7:04, I'll call the meeting to order. Welcome everybody, Happy New Year. So let's see, we have a hard stop tonight. Sounds like of about 9:30, so we're gonna try to move right along. So first up, the next meeting dates, the timeline, the annual town meeting. I've got a request today from, well, first I got a request from Mark Purple that we get as many of our warrant articles approved by town council or run them by town council before our final vote on them as possible, as many as we can. I told them that we had so many late applications this year, very late applications. We're really down to the wire, and we'll do everything that we can. In order to achieve that, see, we have a meeting penciled in for scheduled for the 24th of January.
Yeah.
See,
You don't have this wrong.
but we do not have this room, so that one would have to be either in person, perhaps across the road, or simply just a full-on Zoom meeting. But we can figure that one out. We have another meeting scheduled, a backup meeting for the 31st of January. Select board has asked for all articles to be in by the 26th. We'll do everything we can. If we end up with, one article or maybe two that simply not possible to get done in that time frame, we end up using the 31st. It's just the way it's going to go. But I think with those two meetings, certainly with the first one, I think it's possible for us to get through this.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, please.
Because the committee can do their work, but then I have to do work. And there's no time there for that to happen. So, and I'll be honest, I've been losing sleep over this for a month at the moment. Is there any way you could meet next week? Whether, and that would be, I'm hoping, I talked, is this all right, Ben?
Yes, please.
I discussed this with Ben. My goal tonight is to get some of these warrant articles. You may not have the final, I don't know how you do a vote contingent on more info, but so that I can start writing the warrant articles. If you're approving the project in theory, you could do the final nitty gritty MOU, but I can write the warrant article, get that off to town council, and then we do need some legal opinion on some of the things you may be voting on. And if you could meet next week, that means you'd really be in good shape to go for the 28th.
So are you suggesting, Freddie, that instead of the 31st, we meet next week or still keep the 31st?
No, the 31st is sort of,
I think it would be very unlikely it would be necessary. If we met next week, for instance, on the 18th.
is that a Thursday?
That's a Thursday.
Is there a Concom meeting?
There is not till the 20th.
Historical?
I can't be here next Thursday.
We can,
So
we
somebody
can
else will
find
have to
someone
do it.
else for you.
Or could we do
hard to
Wednesday?
do, but
I could do Wednesday.
can't do Wednesday.
Okay.
Brett can't, I can't.
Okay,
That's the
Thursday works for
17th,
me.
right?
that is the 17th.
Yeah, and this room's taken.
Okay.
Okay, so it's this room's open on the 18th?
I didn't ask, but if not, we could do a over there or a pure Zoom meeting.
Yeah.
I will find that out in the morning. Is that all right? Can you make me? So the 18th, you have a
18th.
forum?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you hear my
That's-
sigh of relief? Thank you.
Yes, of course. Yeah, and I just want to stress what Freddie said. She has been doing a Herculean amount of work to get us ready for town meeting. Without her, we would just be absolutely lost. So thank you so much for all the effort you've been putting in, Freddie. It's a lifesaver. Review the next agenda item, review the revised draft budget. We have some good news there. And Freddie, one of the many tasks she's taken on is getting the whole budget reconciled and working with Carla to figure out exactly where we stand. As you recall, we had some confusion. Exactly how much money is available for funding this year. Got some good news there.
We do. Carla reran the numbers again, and she had a long talk with Stuart at the coalition. I then sent this revised budget to her, and The only thing is I may change some of the account names to match. Change them back to what we had before, they were changed to something different, but, so I am very confident except for one item, and there's something new this year. In the past years, we always took a adjustment for how the state match came in separate, and we put that in our budget for like next year's revenue. That's not where it belongs. It's an adjustment. It doesn't go in with revenue. And you're going to have to decide at some point when you get to that, because you don't have to take short amounts of money, but there's nothing to say you can't. And Ben was going to speak to that, so I'll let him do that, but, just running through the budget, so now we just have the, you want the line by line, or you just want the dollar amount?
In the interest of, things along, maybe just the dollar amount.
Right, so we have an estimated budget on the front page that has this, the set asides, which then carry over into on the second page, you have the, reservations for the historic open space and, housing. Then you can spend out of those accounts, not spend, but you can allocate, out of those accounts. So what we have right now are, aside from the specifics, we call them the buckets, open space, housing, and historic. Aside from that, we have the CPA fund balance, that's the big balance. We have budgeted reserve from fiscal year 24 from last year. Revenue we didn't spend. And then we have from our budget this year, the anticipated fiscal year 25 revenues. You add those all up, we have three projects we're bonding. This year, the townhouse, we didn't fund it last year, so we have to pay some short-term interest for fiscal year 24, plus we have to pay the fiscal year 25 bond amount. So those two are added together. But aside from that, you have the Burnett House and the library. For the Burnett House, I took as much as I used the historic reserves to fund that. It's the historic project. It doesn't matter which historic project you use the reserves on. And a few years ago, we decided just put it all in one project. It makes it much easier if there's ever a change in the funds, which there could be in this budget later. So if you take out the historic reserves, you have what's left. And then if you add up all the bond money and you subtract it from all of the account balances, we end up with $1,426,000. Sorry, this is the 834. That's the amount we have after you take out the bond. It is the bond payments. It is $1,146,979,000. So that is enough. And why that's important to know now, because if you don't know exactly everything you're going to budget today, or you're going to approve today, you have 4 applications on the table in front of you, and that can take care of anything you want to fund in this application. So that,
In other words, if we vote to move 2 projects forward to town meeting tonight, or whatever, we don't have to worry about being left short on other projects. There's enough money, which we did not think was going to be the case. So this is just fantastic.
so this allows to move forward on some of those warrant articles if you so vote. And the only thing I didn't mention was that the total amount, the bond amount total is $279,854 from non-historic accounts. So it's over 300,000 in just bond payments. So we're going to pay that and still have this other, because those are all the good. So do you want to speak to the decision you have to make on the state match reconciliation?
Yeah, so when we reconcile the reconciliation of the state match, simply, when we're looking forward to put a budget together, we have to estimate how much the state is going to do for the match. And no one can see into the future, although Freddie does a pretty darn good job of it, and we're usually within a couple of percent. But the fact is, we never get it exact. And we then have to reconcile that the next year to get the books straight. That reconciliation actually doesn't have to take place if it's a de minimis amount, if it's only, $5,000 or less. I think, don't quote me on that. We technically don't have to do the reconciliation. We don't have to, but we can if we want to. And the reason why I think we want to is we can only spend up to 5% of our budget on admin, and which is a consultant, Betsy, our membership to the coalition, and we just don't have a lot of wiggle room there. And if we overestimate, do I have that right? If we don't reconcile it, we run the risk of running shy on our admin funds, even if it's by $500. That's too much. We need that money. So even though we don't have to, I would recommend that every year we go and we do the reconciliation, which does require writing a warrant article. But it's an easy explanation, and I can't imagine that I'm in trouble with approving it.
So, thank you. I put the set asides in the box next to it on the front page, but actually not, it's less than that, but the admin money, every penny counts. And that means I'm going to change, everything's going to slide over, you vote to take that. It will change the dollar amount in the reserves, and then it will change, not a lot, but we'll change how much we put towards the bond from the store. So that will change, but if you're comfortable with that, I can write these warrant articles up and then send them to town council. And then you get to vote on them before it gets printed. So nothing goes on the warrant until you vote.
Yeah, so just in terms of a sort of a straw poll, just to sort of authorize Freddie, if anyone doesn't think that's a great idea, please speak up. Okay, so that's, I think that's a thumbs up.
All right, you don't need to vote because we're going to vote on the warrant
Yeah.
after I write it up.
Exactly.
After
Yeah.
I send it to town.
Okay, great.
So that's that one.
So that's one warrant article down. All set. Okay. Next up, project application review. So first up, Southborough Golf Club. Let's see. Freddie, you haven't had any contact with Tony, have you?
No, I meant to, it was,
It's
it
just,
was a tough week for me.
yeah, it's for everybody.
This is my first time over the house. And it's
Yeah.
more than a year, so.
And that's fine. So we have discussed it with him, and
You have a rep from the golf club committee here?
great. Okay, so and I had a conversation also with Andrew Bennington this morning. He gave me a call, and ran by him the idea that we had spoken about, which is so the golf course is seeking, in rough terms, $500,000 for the installation of the irrigation system. Folks may recall initially we talked about, can you bond against that? And I offered to talk to Brian Valentine, and we've been told that that's not possible. I offered to talk to him and see if there's any way to make it work. The long and short of it is very difficult to bond against the revolving fund because of the relatively short term of the management contract that ties into it. For all this, an idea came from, was it from you, Freddie? Yeah, Freddie came up with a brilliant idea, which is,
Before you go on to the brilliant idea, the CPC does not have bonding capacity either, so the bonding could not be done through CPC.
Yeah.
So that was off the table for your.
yeah, after bonding the townhouse, we're out of commission for bonding for probably another 5 to 6 years. So the wonderful idea was we do something that is effectively a no interest loan. We there is some money in the revolving fund right now. We would assume that most or all of that money would go towards the project. The remainder, we propose the town meeting fully fund, but that every year, a certain percentage of the revolving fund be repaid to the CPA trust fund. And various numbers have been thrown about. I was had in the back of my mind 50%. I was speaking with Andrew this morning, and he said he was thinking something more along the lines of 30% or a third or something like that. But seemed generally favorable towards it, which makes me hope that we would get support from the selectmen on this. And I think it would make it a much easier sell to town meeting. And with the funny weather that we've had, that also helps with the sell here. There was so much rain this past year that we got to see what the golf course would look like with a functioning irrigation system. And what it would look like is lush and green. And even with all of the rain days that would tend to limit golf play, the playership was actually up this year because the golf course was so gorgeous. Now, it seems that an investment in the irrigation system, especially in a drier year, of course, will still look lush and green. I think the playership will continue to. I think it's a great investment, the town was told from the start that the golf course would be paying for itself. This allows it to do that. We can help out with that, bridge this big expense, and I think it's something that would be acceptable to town meeting. So,
just back to the play this year. It increased, but there were a lot of days they couldn't play because it was raining. So, that really shows what the irrigation difference would make. If you had sunny days when it wasn't all dried up and nobody wants to go there, that it was lush, you would have even a better resource. And this is about the recreation contribution of that course to this town.
Well, that's what I was just gonna say. I mean, we fought hard years ago for the fields because we didn't, the irrigation and amongst other things been kept up to date. And so, the fields suffered. So if we want to protect these assets, we absolutely have to invest in them 100%.
I think it's a great idea, Ben, but I think where it's basically a 0% loan coming out of CPC. I think what this committee decides the payback should be is what it should be. I think 30% is too little. I'm more inclined myself personally with the 50% because other projects could come during that time where that money is tied up as well. And that 20% could make a huge difference. And I think, and Marguerite, I know you're here, but I would think the selectmen would be supportive of a 0% loan to, upgrade an asset of the town that has huge benefits for everyone, even in the winter with sledding and whatnot. So I think you're spot on with the 50% versus the 30%.
Can I add a question on the back of that?
Yeah.
What was the objection? Why were they taking 30%? Because they want to leave that buffer with the golf course in case something.
I think that is primarily the thinking. The management company is required to undertake certain tasks for the maintenance of the golf course, but not everything. Capital improvements being one of them, like an irrigation system. And I think the concern was to try to leave themselves flexibility if something else like this comes up. But 50%, I don't know,
Yeah, they can always, if something else comes up, there's a town meeting every year. And again, what you're getting is 0% loan and tying up funds. Again, we don't know 5 years from now or 2 years from now. There may be a really great project that comes forward that we don't have the bonding capacity for that. Again, that could make a huge difference.
Actually, that's a concern that I have. So one of the questions I would wonder before going ahead with this is how profitable has the golf course been in previous years? I know that there's a lot of reporting in this most recent year that they made a positive net profit, but it's maybe this was an aberration. Will we really get our money back? I would really want to see the data on.
I think
How many years it's been in existence, what the net profit has been over that time? See
It's
if we
gone
would-
up every year, that I can tell.
The first year, it was $30,000 in the black the first year, correct?
And that
And
was the
it's,
construction site.
and it- yeah,
Yeah.
and it was in fairly rough condition. And this year, as I understand it, in the black, 80,000.
I thought it was 90, but it's somewhere in that range.
Somewhere in that,
80 last year.
80 last year,
I
okay,
think we did
I think it's
91.
90, yeah.
okay.
That's what I just saw.
So, the progression has been increasing every year
Yeah.
fairly consistently from 30 up to about 90.
If we're talking
is-
about 50% of that, we're talking about.
And we could be
15,
talking about
25.
a 10 or a 12-year repayment period.
Yeah.
You know, if things continue, before they, presumably they'll plateau off at some point, but, we're pretty close to looking at like a 10-year, 12-year payback period.
The other thing we need to be aware of, I made sure we could take money back into the account that was, was that legally allowed, and it's written in the act, so that is, and we have to be sure that the money comes back to CPA, not to town general
Yeah.
funds. I'm wondering if there wouldn't be anything to prevent them from paying it back sooner, and when you, one thing I didn't know was
No, don't give us money.
the other thing, just to make sure everyone knows that we had anticipated them coming to us. There have been discussions about to the CPC looking for more funds to repave the parking lot because
Yes.
it was detrimental to that was another thing that helped boost membership, right? It was a dust bowl, it was awful. And they used their own what do you call it, the revolving
Revolving
fund?
fund.
So that was something that I think we may have had some money in an account that could have gone towards that, maybe, and they funded it on their own. So that shows good management there.
Yeah.
But I was just curious, you said 91 this year and 80 last year. How much total is in the account? You want to know that, or how
That I
much they
don't
can
have, sir.
contribute?
Isn't there a max that you can keep?
Yeah, that's a problem. It's 100 max.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, any overage gets swept into the town general fund.
That's what I understand.
So let's sweep it this way.
Absolutely.
But
Write that in the article,
Yeah,
that,
Yes.
so that is
It-
like,
yes.
right there, I mean, that is a great idea. If
Yes.
it's gonna sweep, it should sweep towards.
well, I think with 50% coming to us, they would have to be getting 200,000 for any of this swept. But
Agree, but again, you never know, you never
You
know
never
what you
know.
never know, and you know
COVID,
what?
ground shoes comes, people
Oh,
need something to
that's it.
do.
Somebody-
Okay, I didn't say that, but.
Something
It's
happens.
possible.
You never
Yes,
know, I
it
guess,
is.
okay,
So,
absolutely, that makes sense.
anything over the limit on the account goes to the CPs
For the payback of a loan, yeah.
and not into the general fund. I'll write it up, town council, I'm sure.
Everybody else,
Sounds
like,
good.
yeah, makes
I,
sense.
I would suggest that if there was an objection from the select board, it would probably be to that particular element, but I think it's worth trying.
Well, again, it's 0%
It is.
loan, I can't imagine them not accepting the terms that CPC sets.
And the revolving fund should always go back to.
Can you?
Yeah.
One concern I had, are they aware of anything big coming down the road that they might need to use a revolving fund, that the 50% could be a problem for them?
It's.
We want to set a maximum, like 50%, but not if you only make 10 grand in a year, maybe.
That's like the maintenance facility. I know there's been some talk about that through the years. It's not in the greatest shape. Is that something that's,
it hasn't been
Okay.
talked about, it's just there. are some
We're living with it,
projects.
Ben.
okay, and the plan is to continue with.
Yeah.
I mean, $500,000 is a big spend, but,
I think it's 525, isn't it?
This has been our biggest problem for the last 20 years.
Yeah,
Yeah, you got it. It's gonna get worse.
We're probably the only golf course that has no irrigation water.
Yeah.
In the area. It didn't show last year, but when we hit July, August, usually the percentage goes down.
Yeah. We're kicking the can down the road if we just don't do this, and
Yeah.
the
We were,
cost
we
just
were
goes
very
up.
lucky this year that we got as many as we did because the weekends rained out. We got a lot of Saturdays
One
and
day of
Sundays,
every
and
weekend.
those are the best days. to make money, so.
So, I'm hearing some general agreement, and, so I guess what I would suggest is that we, I think how we should phrase the motion, the effect we want to have here is to, authorize Freddie to draft a warrant article capturing the thoughts that we've spoken here tonight, that can be forwarded to town council for legal review. After legal review, it will come back to us to do another vote on to presumably forward that article to town meeting.
Can I make one comment?
Please.
It would be wonderful if I got this done in time and have town council's review by next week. But I would ask everyone to go through the application again to see if there's any little things you want. At least I'll have my version of the warrant where you, town council hasn't come back. But that if you want to tweak it again, you will have another opportunity before it's final, if you review and vote on the final dollar amounts and all of that.
And then would you share with the select board and the golf committee, what our thought process is here tonight, what
Yes.
we're offering?
Yes.
So.
Yep.
You know, I mean.
And then just for Freddie's benefit on the back of what you just said, like what are the key points we need to make sure are
Yes.
covered? Just
Yeah.
let's recap them really quick, like are
So-
there maximum, minimums, you know,
So-
key points we raised.
Talking about, so, number one, we need to know the current balance of the revolving fund. And and what the plans are for it. Any amount that is not spoken for right now, we would ask be put towards the project. Let's say it's $50,000, that would make the total ask at town meeting $475,000.
You may wish to look at it. For some reason, I thought it was 525.
But right, so if it's $525, but if they have $50,000
Oh,
on
okay.
hand,
Sorry.
I'm using hypothetical numbers here.
Okay.
That would make the ask, $475. And then we discussed that 50% of the receipts to the revolving fund be repaid each year to the Community Preservation Act Trust Fund of South Vermont. And that after that transfer has been made, if the year-end balance of the revolving fund is going to be greater than $100,000, resulting in a sweep of funds into the general fund, that excess also be contributed back to the Community Preservation Act Trust Fund.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And this to continue until and then to stop upon repayment of the original amount without interest.
That sounds like a great motion.
Oh, there's a little more to it. So that's almost perfect.
Yeah.
To add into that,
Oh. Audubon International.
so there's an outstanding
Yeah.
Yeah.
CPA project, and the way to move this forward, it's not to be certified Audubon International, but to have the plan in place and the irrigation system to the Audubon International standards, which I've been assured, working with the people they're working with, it's going to be, but that's just an added oversight. Audubon International Classic course enrollment is a assurance of things being done to the highest environmental standards, and it's one of the ways we got the funding for the golf course in the first place,
Yeah.
because not everyone was in favor of funding the golf course, and just like this no interest loan will help, that helps, so we want to make sure it happens, follows through.
And that's something that we will also capture within the memorandum of understanding, that the plan to continue with Audubon, the Audubon International certification continues, and that this work be done according to their requirements.
Do we want to, I think it was, Lisa mentioned this, do we want to add any wording in the event that the golf course does have a year that is not good?
I mean, there, it would only, 50% of nothing would be nothing in that case. You know.
Does that
Yeah,
cripple them though?
Yeah,
I guess?
hopefully that doesn't, and
Is there a contingency fee?
Can you say at a minimum of
Yeah, I just don't wanna
$20,000 a
cripple
year?
them.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
if they don't make, if they have a bad year for God knows whatever reason, again, that this world.
Because that provides us with some certainty.
I don't wanna,
Because if
like,
they keep on
take
losing money
everything.
every year. then
Yeah.
so
we will
if
obviously
the,
still have to-
Yeah,
the year-end revolving
I
fund
don't
fund
imagine
balance
it's more than
is
okay.
less than somebody threw out $20,000, then, no payment would be made that year.
Can
Or,
we say instead of the balance, because if somebody spends everything that's in there, it could be up to 20, so
or
if the
receipts.
receipts, there you go, perfect,
Uh,
perfect.
Okay.
Wait a minute, what do you mean receipts?
So
Because
the-
what
the
if they
money-
have 50,000 from the year before they didn't spend and they have a bad year?
So, no, if say they have a bad year and they only get $40,000 or $20,000 is what they get from the management company for the full year, that
We have to update.
we would just wanna leave it in the revolving
leave it in the
fund.
revolving fund.
Yeah.
But what if they had
So,
What I was saying
a good
is,
year the year before and $80,000 sitting?
what if you pay $100,000 and you get
That's it.
50%, and then the next year they bring in zero?
Right.
We have a
still
minimum
got
that
50
says
sitting
they have
there.
to pay us 10,000 or 20,000 every year regardless.
I
of-
see
So
Yeah.
that we know that we'll get it back within 20 years.
It's
or-
funny, we're
We
kind of
can't
looking
set
at
a
it
minimum.
from two different
We are.
angles, because I was kind of looking at it from the golf course angle of like, do we wanna rob them when
Yeah.
things are down?
no,
Not rob, that's not the right word,
no.
but do we wanna
Yeah.
fill them in the event that, it's like we're kind of compensating both ways, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess for my part, I feel comfortable with the 50%, if it, you know,
Could not adjust to the future, right?
Yeah.
If it's a disaster next year,
50%
we
of
could
what's in
put
the
it in
fund.
or not, right?
Well, that's exactly what I was gonna say, Brett. Brett's got it exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, if this arrangement, just doesn't work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This can be revisited at a subsequent town meeting.
That's the best way.
Can I ask, is there a, so I'm gonna have to write this a certain way because
There's two ways. of
they're
going.
asking us, can we,
One costs $25,000.
Guys, I can't think.
Yeah.
That,
The only difference is there would be no.
I can't think, Dick.
No remote.
Excuse me, Dick.
Sorry about that.
Thank you. The. Literally,
You have to write this a certain
Contingency.
way, yeah.
is there contingency funding? And this is not for the whole amount. It's what they spend.
Oh.
Because, you know,
Oh,
not what they spend, but they're gonna go out to bid.
yeah,
We're gonna get the, you know, it might come in less, it might come in more. So I'm just letting you know, I'll have to cover that
Okay.
somehow.
Okay, so
But
yeah,
not sure exactly, it's not necessarily gonna be
like
525.
10%.
I would say, you know, including all of our recreation projects, there was one where we didn't do this and it was a problem. We sort of instituted a
15%.
15% contingency on all. on
And then
all
we went
projects.
like overboard.
Yeah, and then, but
Lesson
it's,
learned.
the language is always included that the contingency is only available with the approval of community preservation. So even though we add that 15%, it's not,
It's not to go out to spend it.
yeah,
They can't just immediately.
Exactly.
Add a higher bid and have it go right through.
So my
exactly.
point is, they're only gonna be repaying what they
Actually
spend,
use.
and we may have to, and we're gonna have to have we're gonna have to ask town council, do we need a contract agreement in addition to the warrant article? I think you would.
I would imagine you would.
So I'll ask for that as well. And I think we're good to go for now, and if you're meeting next week, we can fix it. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I just wanted to, one thing that I've been thinking about, I know that we're wrapping this up, but after our last meeting, which we were talking about the Southborough Historic Society and how to use that building, if anybody pays a fee, then how it wouldn't really be public.
Yes,
And I know that's obviously a private entity and that kind of thing, but here I'm thinking, even though the golf course is owned by the town, if you have to actually pay to use the golf course, is it really, you know, is paying for the irrigation for those using only the golf course, is that really a public benefit that's being derived? Or isn't it primarily benefiting the golfers rather than the town at
I think
large?
the precedent there though is everything we've ever done for recreation. Meaning, you know, we've invested in our track, we've invested in our fields, and that's,
In terms of the, I'm sorry, Chris, I don't mean to interrupt you, you should thought.
you know,
In terms of the anti-aid amendment, I want to get this right. So I actually spent, between yesterday and today, I want to admit how many hours I spent learning about the anti-aid amendment.
Yeah.
It's, one of those things, when you read the amendment itself, it's just one sort of lengthy sentence and it's easy to understand. But then the lawyers got to it over the years, and it's become complicated. Because the golf course is owned by the town and managed by municipal officials, it's a legal presumption that money spent on the golf course benefits the municipality.
Yeah.
And we can, we'd certainly welcome feedback from town council if we have that wrong in our warrant article. But after sort of banging my head against it for, more than a couple of hours these past 2 days, that is my understanding.
Okay.
so I just want to retract what I said, just because we are on Zoom.
Mhm.
We have used CPC funds, obviously, for recreation, that's one of the buckets.
Yeah.
It was not for the projects that I mentioned, I have to correct myself. However, the basketball court at Fayetteville, I think, is a very good example. We don't all play basketball. We don't all even use that playground, but we use CPC funds to build basketball court, and that was no problem.
But do you have to pay, so in order to use, I could be wrong, in order to use the golf course, do you have to pay? Or to town residents?
Yes,
Okay, so even town residents, they have to pay.
Yes.
Okay,
I think the
so I just think
difference
from
is,
my perspective, and even from a legal standpoint, I think that the question of access will be an issue for me going forward.
Right.
So I just want to let you all know that.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
The only thing I challenge there is though, we use the golf course all the time and I don't golf. You know what I mean?
But will irrigation benefit you, like if you
I
go and
believe
walk
so,
there?
but it's
Okay.
the value of the course, which is a town asset owned by the town, I think that's the difference, Grant, for me, is the Bayville is privately owned, where this is owned by the municipality, by the citizens of Southborough. And even the management company has a contract with the elected officials, the select board with the town of Southborough. So for me, that's the difference. I see exactly where you're coming from, but I think for the anti-aid, it's because it is a municipality, it doesn't have the concerns and the issues that a private entity may have.
And as a town property, it's not just to make it look pretty, like to properly care for a field, for a golf course, for anything to avoid future issues. Like it's not just to be green, like it's about the proper care of that course, of that property.
And Grant, I'll say, I share your concerns. I'm not a golf. No, I get really no benefit out of this. And the legal basis for it being acceptable is, and it's, I don't know how to say this, it's a legal basis, not necessarily a rational basis. I completely understand the point that you're making. And I could be wrong on this, but my understanding of the law is that the law says it's okay.
Do you want me to ask if there is any anti-aid amendment issues with the packages of the?
I think that'd be a good, I think that'd be a good idea.
It wouldn't hurt.
No, this is the
Question
year of
could come up
ADA
at
questions,
town hall.
honestly. I think we should get it resolved.
Because it has come up and I think Ben will talk about it later, but it's something this committee is going to dig into deeper after we get through this town meeting.
Yeah.
Because, coming up with a standard process for private property.
And I think what Kristen said as well is, recreation charges groups to use the fields. And, so in essence, there is a fee for rap programs as well that may use the
Exactly.
facilities as well. So, but I think it's a great question and it's definitely worth having an answer to.
Yeah, let's.
Okay.
let's-
It's one that will come up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Question.
Okay.
All right, so, you know what, I'm gonna ask that we just do a formal vote to authorize Freddie to draft the warrant article to submit to town council for review. Would somebody care to make a
So
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. And Betsy's ready.
All right.
Everybody in favor? Okay, unanimous. Okay, great. Okay, next up, the Peninsula Trail. Yeah, connecting the final graph, yeah, from the Peninsula Trail. We have the presentation from Kat, and she's gotten us all the information that we had asked for. Anyone have questions, comments, concerns they'd like to raise?
Yeah, that's a great project. It seems to fit perfectly in. It was well built. I think it was well.
And she gave us more information than we asked for, so, yeah.
It was,
And she has more. So
yes,
I did speak with her before the meeting to assure her that she wasn't needed tonight, but that she would have an opportunity. And she has some support letters she wants to, more support letters she'd like to send in. So she does want to come in and speak and answer any questions if there are any. And I think she's revising something and she may have some little good news for us, but I think the application as it stands is what you can be comfortable taking a position on tonight.
in particular, you know, one of the things we asked for was the budget to date, what's been
Yeah.
spent so far. And we got that, and we asked for, you know, the basis for the estimates, and these are based on actual concrete numbers put together by an engineer, and I believe components of it by, you know, by actual construction companies. So we got all the information that we asked for, and it sounds like no one feels that we're lacking anything. So again, be looking for a motion to authorize Freddie to draft a warrant article to appropriate in rough terms, $180,000 requested by Trails Committee. That includes a contingency, is my understanding, with the appropriate language for submission to town council for legal review.
Second.
And the second?
Who made the motion?
Kristen made the motion. I seconded.
All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay. Town clerk. So at our last meeting, Mr. Hegarty was kind enough to come and talk with us for a bit. He submitted a revised application. One thing that is missing in the application that we did ask for is we need to know specifically which documents are going to be preserved. And it doesn't have to be a 10-page list of, you know, each individual document, but you know, vital records from 1792 to 1801 in these books, or whatever it is, but with some specificity. And then we need the historical commission to have found that these records are valuable in the history of Southborough, and we ask that they also take a vote whether or not they recommend the preservation of these artifacts. So we don't have the specific items that he's requesting to preserve. So we still need to get that information, I think, before we act on it. And then there were some questions about, and I feel awful about this because I think I gave Jim some bad information several months ago. My understanding was certain work that I was calling triage work, like having an archivist go through the documents and say, okay, this needs to be preserved, this doesn't, and even putting together an archive. It was my understanding that was allowed. And Freddie spoke with the coalition, and part of their correspondence we got via email. And we only got it yesterday because of the holidays. And Stuart was just unavailable for a long spell, but he was good enough to get it to us before the meeting. That stuff's not allowable. And I honestly, I feel kind of sick for having steered Jim wrong. in good faith, I really thought it was allowable. From reading through Stuart's letter, it sounds like what is fundable is, and he actually, I don't know if anyone had the time to read it. He gives an excellent explanation that's going to serve us well into the future, understanding this stuff. Of what is fundable and why. And it is literally the preservation of the documents is what is fundable. And he goes on to describe why the archiving is not, why the triage of documents is not. And when you read through it, it sounds like you read it also.
I did.
Yeah, it makes sense to read through it.
Yeah.
So I haven't talked to him yet. I owe him a phone call to apologize. But I don't think his full ask is fundable, but a portion of it certainly is.
Yeah, I went through, Ben, like the top piece, the actual bids that he had, and I pulled out the digitizing piece, which was the addendum.
Yeah.
On both of those, and then I also questioned the archivist labor. I don't think that's fundable either.
Unfortunately, it's not.
Yeah, I came out in the exact same place that you did.
It's Freddie told me something that Stuart said to her in a phone call, and a project can be incredibly worthwhile and very valuable to the town. That's a different question, is whether or not it's fundable under the Community Preservation Act. It's a little frustrating. This we talked when Jim was here. I've been down in the catacombs and seen the condition of these documents and the conditions they're stored in. I wish we were allowed by law to do that.
Ben, just a quick question. So you had said that we haven't received lists of documents, but I thought the NEDCC documents that he sent along do include what the types of documents are.
I'm sorry.
If it's in there, that's a bid, the committee needs a list themselves. That's if that's all he's doing. Could be a separate list. He had a list that he sent to them, right?
So right here, it says box of documents, title, tax, and valuation list, 1771 to 1782, with a description of the documents and the condition, and the price for that. Object 2, 1773 highway and wood tax lists.
It's just a separate list for that,
Okay,
not part of a bid. Right.
but we do have the detail on what documents. He gave us some anecdotal detail when he was here, and he did provide us in these documents with.
The question
The type
wasn't
of
clear
things
if
that-
there was anything else he was looking to restore in that application
Okay.
besides what he said, no.
So is your suggestion, Freddie, that we get a list from him and then historic vote on that specific list?
Did you have that document when they took the vote before?
No,
So they haven't voted on a specific documents,
Which
which is
yeah,
required for something on Stewart said.
Should be fairly easy to get, Grant. I would think if you can get
Yes.
it on your next agenda.
we had a meeting on the 20.
yeah, in one of those
Second,
votes is actually required under the CPA, that finding that it's
I'll send the exact
meaningful
language.
to the history. of
Yeah, we
something.
did take that vote,
Yeah.
but if you would like another vote, I'm sure. Well,
Okay, yeah,
I think Kevin's in the audience, but
Yes.
I don't want to speak for him, but I would guess that we could have it on our agenda. Again.
and I'm guessing that
It wouldn't hold up the committee can vote to approve pending getting that vote, but if the vote has to be, and Stuart said this to me, it has to be specific to, it has to be the specific items that the committee, the commission has to vote them on.
I'm guessing that list exists, in order
Yes.
for this information to get to NEDCC. I'm guessing that he submitted some sort of document to them that would have all that information. I'm hopeful that this is a very easy ask for him to get to us. And we still have the time to make this work for the things that are funded.
So then process question. So are we gonna ask Jim to resubmit? And we'll take a vote on that next week? For the warrant article, or,
That would be great if we could do that.
Okay.
That-
I'm just trying to figure out our next.
Can I just
step.
ask, resubmit,
the list
Well,
of
what he's looking for,
specific
yeah,
documents.
if you have to take off the archivist. And you have to lower the bids, the 2 bids that he got fundable, you have to pull off the addendums, then it's not 43,000.
Can
And if
you,
I'm reading this, is this now just? And I'm sorry if you said this, it's now, can he really only just do the preservation,
Yes,
which is like,
the committee
it's like
could,
17,500, that's what I came up, plus the 2,100.
you could look at the application in front of you and say, this is what's fundable, and this is the dollar amount. I'm not sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we could do that,
I would like to give Jim
Yeah.
the opportunity to, if he's got something floating around in the back of his mind, you know, well, there are these other if I can, the only thing I can do is preservation.
Yeah.
Maybe I should rearrange things in this way, or what, I want to give him that flexibility. I
Yeah.
feel awful for the position I put in.
I think that's great.
So I'm gonna reach out to
I
Jim.
don't think you should beat yourself up so much though.
I agree that
Um,
it's a learning curve. and
Yeah, I mean,
process.
Yeah,
Every
yeah.
meeting, I'm learning something new, so,
So anyhow, I'm gonna reach out to Jim tomorrow or Monday and, you know, obviously with the kitty's, permission and, give him, I'll give him, you know, an explanation. And, yeah,
In the meantime, they've actually given him great, for those who haven't
Yeah.
read it, they've given him great support for, or requesting an increase of his budget.
and I'll tell you, you know, from now on, whenever we're looking at the preservation of an artifact, we have some excellent guidance here. It's gonna serve us well in the future. We, you know, we won't make the same mistake.
And could I draft the warrant article based on what,
Preservation alone.
yeah, just to put the words that's allowable and then no dollar amount and
And
fill that in.
And frankly, I think the list of documents will be something that we address in the memorandum of understanding. We're obviously not gonna put that in the article.
Yeah.
It'll be more general, the preservation of historic documents, with a dollar amount, but I think, but the specific
oh, we
documents.
don't put these specific, that would go in the MOU.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that leaves room for Freddie to do exactly what she's talking about. The
And
committee,
maybe not even sending it to town clerk, to town council, but
Right.
getting the work.
getting it.
Yeah, so you don't have to do a
We're
last
fine.
minute for whatever we do approve. right?
I've been, yeah, this last minute is. I mean, they wanted us to have the warrant articles before we met again. And you haven't even voted on all the projects, so. That would be helpful. You don't need to vote on it.
Yeah.
I'll just draft. That's just a. Consensus. I
Direction
can
that
do it.
we, yeah, it's not wasted time.
So we're generally comfortable with that? Yeah, great.
So you're basically saying you're gonna fund the project at some amount. And you're looking forward to another application. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or I would say to, an amended application or supplementary information to address the contents of Stewart's review. Okay. Next up, okay, the Bigelow Hall project. We had our last meeting where we asked for some additional information. What we've gotten back so far, we got an email from Michael that was circulated. Folks have had a chance to look through that.
Yes.
I guess for my part, well, I don't know if anyone has had the chance to look through. So Freddie had a phone call with Stewart just prior to the holidays. And Stewart committed to responding in writing, but with all of his holiday commitments, he said it was gonna be right down to the wire, and it was. We got his comments on this project. Freddie forwarded them this afternoon.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yeah, they just came in this afternoon.
yeah, they just came in. So the two new pieces of information we have are the letter from Michael Wyshan with an email, and then the email from Stewart from the coalition. reviewing the various elements of the project. Has everyone had the chance to look through most of this stuff? Yeah, this is a tough one. Before the last meeting, I went through the act itself in the DOR's guidance, trying to find elements that are fundable. Michael, indicated in his letter that the preservation restriction is now off the table. And my feeling before reading Stuart's correspondence was that gives me a great deal of pause with the anti-aid amendment concerns. And then I read through Stuart's letter and sort of hammers that point home. One clarification I'd like to make to Stuart's letter, not a correction, but just adding more information. He says that there's no historical work being done, historical preservation work. And what's left unsaid is that we would be funding because that work has already been undertaken. The work remaining that we're asked to fund just doesn't really have a lot of, I think his point was there's just not a lot of historical preservation content in the work. Really. My big concern is the anti-aid amendment. If we, like I said, I've been trying to find elements that are fundable, like the entryway. Here's the concern. If we fund the preservation of the entryway, the society, let's say that financially the project doesn't work out, that it's not, I think there's a hope that it's going to be self-sustaining financially through the various activities and so forth. If it's not, and they sell Fayetteville Hall, the town is it's investment. We've lost any kind of protection. We don't have any protection. And so I wrote some notes going through the anti-aid amendment to try to get it all straight in my mind.
Did Michael say that he's not, the way I read it was that they're not seeking a preservation restriction on the interior, which had been discussed like for the history of the floor, but that after their construction is complete, that they are still seeking a preservation restriction, a deed restriction on the property.
Okay, yeah, a deed restriction, which is
okay.
It's different than a preservation. Yeah.
It sounded to me like they are planning to preserve it in perpetuity going forward after the work is complete.
So, but believe it or not, a deed restriction is not in perpetuity.
Okay.
It's for them, but they could sell it to somebody else who doesn't have to honor it. Is that how that works?
30 years at the most.
30 years at the most, and that's a lawyer question. The next part is the of course the anti-aid amendment. I said it was pretty straightforward, and then the lawyers got involved. So the SJC eventually settled this for now with this they call it the three-part test. So I'll go through. Three-part test is the grant for the purpose of aiding the private institution. So would it be our intent to aid the institution, primarily aid the institution rather than aid in municipality? That's number one. So that's basically what are our intentions in this. Number two, will the grant have the effect of substantially aiding the institution? So regardless of our intention, what's the actual effect? Who is seeing the substantial benefit of the grant? To whom does most of the benefit accrue? And the last prong of the test is, does the grant avoid the risks of the political and economic abuses that prompted the passage of the anti-aid amendment? And that seems to apply less here. But that second one, what will be the effect of the grant, especially in the absence of the preservation restriction? So that's just as one member. That's why I'm on.
So see, just in general, I mean, not too harsh here, but the whole thing didn't seem like a CPC focused proposal, right? It was a line item about here's 15 things we'd like, and right off the bat, it's like, well, that doesn't qualify, that doesn't qualify, that doesn't qualify. So this wasn't something where we can say, well, these couple of tweaks and it's gonna be a great proposal. It's, whole thing is,
There's
there's so many things that are off. I don't know how we'd even begin to write something based on this, you know?
That's right, we read that email, it was like.
Right.
Okay, I mean, definitely not for this town meeting at least, to even have to work
Right,
through all of
yeah, I
those
don't know
things.
where we take this big thing with all these pieces that don't fit, the elevator doesn't fit, the parking, the lighting,
Yeah.
the stairs, the floor,
Inside.
all kinds of stuff that.
And we're still waiting on a list of items that we had asked for, so we could even consider and move forward.
I mean, I know we can't go back in time. I wish this society had come to us before undertaking the project. I don't think the project would have had to have been substantially changed for a lot of the exterior work to have been fundable. And it's a shame that we're in the situation that we're in now. Anyhow, I don't want to completely foreclose on the possibility of getting something fundable out of this. I, just as one member, I guess I would recommend that we don't conduct a vote on it tonight to leave the door open. If there's some.
What would be, you're saying we ask them for some, come back to us again with some new proposal?
You know, I
Did we
feel-
provide that, did we provide that email that we got to them? to historical?
So we only got it,
Right,
And of
right.
course, we're gonna forward that to them. And I think we let them know some of the information that we would need. Also with the Department of Revenue's IGR document that pretty clear about what's fundable and what's not. And then finally, Stuart's email from this afternoon goes through in a great amount of depth.
I think too, Ben, a preservation restriction is a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So I think we let them know that as well. To consider anything. That's the only guarantee for the monies that are given out, and it's been required of everyone else.
Well, that's what I was gonna say, exactly. That has been
Property.
Didn't say
also
Mark's
in
have to do a
Fort
restriction?
Maine and St. Mark's.
Yeah.
And St. Mark's had one from Mass Historical, 84 Maine. The town purchased the.
No, my point is, you required it on town property.
Yeah, yeah.
Never mind private property.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
It's, it's
Yeah.
a very clear standard that the CPC has adhered to. The only other thing you may want to request that you requested last time and still don't have, is no basis for any of the dollar amounts.
Yeah, I was gonna ask to Lisa's point, have we had any communication about the items that were requested last time? And if we go back and ask for additional things, is there any chance this will move forward in a very short time? frame that we
Exactly.
have?
It's certainly looking difficult, but I don't want to say it's impossible. I think, the only element that really jumps to mind is there's a historic front entryway, and I guess some of the pieces may still be in existence. That could possibly be a preservation project.
Wouldn't it need to comply with the Secretary of Interior's standards?
So the question that came up is, what happened to the parts that were there? Where are they? How are they going to be restored? All of that has to be thoroughly. And the other issues the reason this is important, because the issue of funding private properties is a big one right now.
Oh.
Private ownership, not just for this project.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying, that my conversation with Stuart about anti-aid amendment, this committee's going to need to do a deep dive, I think, and having a whole process laid out. But what Stuart said is when a private entity comes to you, they have to provide their financials, so you know that they're financially stable to stay in business. He gave the example of, if you fund something and then somebody is using it from the public and trips and falls and has an accident, And then their insurance rates go sky high. Now they can't afford the insurance and they sell the building. I guess that happened to one project somewhere in the state and it created issues. So the private, this has nothing to do with this project, but the standard for funding any private ownership for whoever down the road comes forth, is going to want to work with the coalition and others to have a really good understanding of what you have to do. So it's not just, I mean, the requirements, if you're going to send the requirements that you want for the new application, really going to need to be line by line if you're going to even spend your time on it.
So can I just add something to that? I mean, back on December 6th, we've given a list of items that we needed. And now it's the 11th, a month later. So if we're going to ask them to try to find something that's fundable, I suggest we put a time frame. We're in such a tight window now, we could have had a discussion on some of these things if we had the information. So my suggestion would be to say by our next meeting, if you want to do something or you can come up with something, this is what we need to even consider it for this town meeting.
Yeah, we don't even need to make that a condition because it's a physical impossibility for us to do anything else. We simply, the crunch is so severe here
Yeah.
that if we don't have it by the next meeting, we literally run out of timeline.
Yeah,
We just
okay.
run out.
Just so they're clear that, you know.
But are you aware of the request for the documentation of their finances?
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, that's that,
Are you
why we
guys-
gotta get them that email ASAP.
Yeah.
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 And they can.
I mean,
see for
Freddie,
themselves.
some of the 4 things we were looking for is actually some of those things.
Yeah.
You know, we wanted
Yeah,
to
you-
know,
you had a
again,
handle
in the
on it.
minutes, it was pretty clear. So we were on the right track at the last meeting. But I think Stuart's looking for suggesting.
If we're reaching out to them, I would be interested to know if they actually meant that it would be a deed restriction rather than a preservation restriction.
Oh, yeah.
My understanding was that they're planning to put a preservation restriction on the building. So I'm wondering if that was just a slip up or if was an actual change in intent. So I would be interested to know that.
And also, but maybe we'll let them know that's a condition of, you know, any consideration is that a PR is required.
On all preservation of real property, that has been our policy.
Yeah.
We learned our lesson on South Union School. Hard lesson to learn. And from that point onwards, that's been written, and this is at the suggestion of the Community Preservation Coalition. It's every project.
I have one more note on this item that I want to ask you about.
Yes.
I feel like there was a demand, request, whatever, put in this letter to us. I don't know if it's typical, but I could see it being a major hindrance, and I think. Right, highlighted there.
We were asked to include Mr. Wychan as a CC on all correspondence with anybody having to do with this project. And I didn't respond specifically to that, but that's not something that we would do for any applicant. However, you know, all documents so generated are absolutely part of the public record. All the documents that we reviewed here this evening will be providing to them. And the fact is, these emails with the coalition, that's the correspondence that we've had over, and we're gonna be giving them to those. But I don't think it's appropriate. The risk here is that not necessarily this applicant, but some other applicant, if this became our procedure, they start getting involved in our good faith efforts just to get information from the coalition or from Mass Historical or whatever.
Yeah.
It would make it impossible for us to do our job.
Yeah.
Great.
This
So,
is the committee.
so for that reason, maybe I should have answered that directly. I didn't, but that was,
I think we might want to just give them.
Yeah.
Well, you just addressed it actually publicly, so that should be fine.
Quick clarification to Grant's question. I did just notice, he actually explicitly said, we do not want a preservation restriction.
Was it?
It will be a deed restriction.
I did not see that.
Yeah, 0.5 and the email.
Oh, yeah.
Just to clarify.
So it's the one other thing I'll say about this, is you made a very good point before, which I assume we'll go back and visit it. It's not to say that this is not a good project. Yeah,
Oh,
like that's
yeah,
not
sure.
it. It's like all of what we discussed earlier with that, you know, will be coming up again. It's a great project.
That's why I've been trying to find elements of it that are fundable, because I think it's a great project, and I think it's gonna be an incredible asset to the town. And I think the programs that the society's talking about running are absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, our role here isn't to decide if it's a great project or not. We're very, very limited to just whether or not it's fundable.
I think you made a great point earlier, Ben, that had they came earlier, there would have been probably an opportunity to do something.
I can say with certainty, I think that there would have been.
Yeah, and just to let you know that this is very unusual that we get written response from the coalition. That was a very unique request. And, you know, it was given the complexity of the project. I mean, that's not their role to we call up, we discuss, we get feedback, I report back, but in these cases, you know, it was critical to have, you know, really clear written review. And
Can you express our like gratitude, because to the point I think Ben made earlier, this is valuable not just for now, but in helping in the
Yeah.
future.
so. Because it was complicated in many levels.
A number of our projects, yeah.
Yeah, this
So-
was one of those years.
Okay, I don't think there's a vote to be taken here. I think the plan going forward is to allow the opportunity to find something fundable. The time is very short, but it's out of our control, but you know, that's where we are right now. I think does anyone have anything else on this agenda item?
So I can work with Betsy to draft points, but I think we now have to come to you back.
Yeah, that's
Okay, and I'll give you some.
okay. Thank you. And we need just to forward along the correspondence from Stuart.
I think it goes with the letter you sent to him.
Yep, perfect. So Kristen, do you have a time when you have to leave this evening? I know occasionally we do.
No meetings tonight.
Okay, because Lisa has to leave at 9:30. I don't want to, so yeah, we still have a bunch to get through, but I see that Jim has come into the room. And Jim, we already talked about your project earlier. And I told the committee that I'd be reaching out to you tomorrow or early next week. We got some feedback from the Community Preservation Coalition, and I owe you an apology. I steered you wrong when we first spoke about this. My understanding of what was fundable under the act, we have since learned from the coalition that I was wrong. The preservation of documents is absolutely allowable. It's some of the other stuff, and this is explained far better than I can in the correspondence from the coalition. But Lisa went through the numbers and found a shade over $20,000 worth of work that is absolutely fundable. The rest, anything that's not the specific preservation of historic artifacts, we are told is not fundable. Because we're so short here on time tonight, I don't know that we can go through everything that we've gone through so far, but I'd be more than happy to.
I just feel like that paragraph says it all.
Okay, yeah, this is, thank you, Chris. I'm going to read just from Stuart, from the Community Preservation Coalition's email. There's one other issue to continue. Consider maintaining, storing, archiving, and managing town documents, as well as adhering to state requirements for same, is a general administrative expense of every town in the Commonwealth. The no supplanting phrase in section 6 of the CPA legislation makes it clear that general municipal budget items belong in the town's general municipal budget governed by Prop 2.5. Municipalities are not allowed to use CPA funds to supplant general municipal spending. You also can't use CPA funds to pay for tasks done by current municipal employees in storing the town's records, whether it be the physical records, microfilm, or digitization, has long been a responsibility of towns funded by general municipal funds.
But none of this. This archive is the 6 hours a week is specifically related to the physical preservation of the documents exclusively. Not the digital, it's nothing else.
Okay, so, in another part of the email, he differentiates, and I'm just looking for clarification. He differentiates between the physical preservation, like, for instance, deacidifying paper or putting in a sewer. Differentiates between that and doing the triage of going through documents and saying, okay, preserve this, don't preserve this. To the extent that he's doing actual preservation, his time is absolutely fundable. Yeah, I mean,
You see, you're gonna have to, with something you're gonna have to check on that.
yeah, we,
On this.
So, yeah,
It's gotta be something physical,
Yeah.
basically what they're saying.
yeah, it's physical preservation. And to the extent that he's doing that, it sounds like it would be fundable.
but
That's exclusively what this is.
the
The other-
KUCK
the other-
runs the paper tax done. Jim, how is he currently paid? Is he paid as a contractor or is he a municipal employee?
Right now, he's a contractor.
So he gets 1099 at the end of the year, he's not on the payroll?
He's on the payroll as a contractor.
His work is as needed and directed by Jim.
Yes, and he has a contract that I've signed. He's not an SAP employee, he's strictly a contractor. And the other, so in the town budget, the town will have, I've put in my town budget for an additional 13 and a half hours a week for the digitization aspect of this. So this 6 hours a week is exclusively for the physical aspect of it.
Okay.
And that's why we asked, I mean, like, for example, today, I just bought $67 worth of materials for conservation, and I mentioned to Lisa, I paid out of my own pocket with non-town money for materials for this guy to use to conservation. Exclusively for that.
Jim, would you have like an hour tomorrow where we
Sure.
could meet? Okay, in the interest of time here, and if the committee would allow it, I would be more than happy to sit down with Jim and go through this item by item to make sure we capture everything that is fundable. And we're gonna be having a meeting next week. We are down to the wire timeline wise, but we can absolutely make this work.
Can I give you a quick heads up for something coming down the
Please.
road? I had two different archival companies come in to review the materials in the basement from the assessors and the tax collector, excuse me, the treasurer. These are records, some go back to $700. And I anticipate that next year they'll be putting in a request for you for approximately $300,000 to preserve those records. And they'll all be sent outside to be preserved. So it's gonna be a big number.
Yeah.
But it's gonna be in that, it's a big number, it's in that range.
First, let me say, it's almost unheard of for somebody to tell us a year in advance that's coming down the road. I want to say thank you. This is something we can contemplate when we're putting our budget together. We know that there's a project coming. This is valuable to us to know that, so thank you.
Okay, I'm free anytime you want. Thank you,
Okay.
appreciate it.
I'll give you a call early on in the morning, and maybe sometime around 9 or 10 o'clock I can come over. Okay,
Wonderful. All right, thank you.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay, I'm gonna give myself a note and then move to the next item.
Well, thanks.
Can I ask a question to our group about this one?
Sure.
So we know that this type of activity was funded previously, so we funded a CPA project, looks like in 2008 for preserving other materials that Jim gave us details on before.
Yeah.
And that one says, from the coalition website, used for the preservation and microfilming of historic town records. So what is the difference in funding microfilming versus
So-
funding scanning?
I'll tell you what the difference is. We got it wrong.
Okay.
That is, to be perfectly honest about it, we learn about this as we go along and through court cases and interpretation by the Department of Revenue, collective understanding evolves, which is why our membership of the Community Preservation Coalition is so valuable. That's the only way that we can stay on top of it. If we were a collection of, well, right now there are only 6 of us on the committee, but we're lay people. we're not experts in this stuff, and without them, we would be. God help us.
Also,
It's a great question.
Southborough was an early adopter, and we used to call it, there were a lot of gray areas, and that's why the Department of Revenue, which is oversees, because it's a tax, right? Writes these IGAs,
IGRs. yes.
IGRs, and so it evolves case law, and some things just hadn't been, you're the first one doing it, and you hadn't heard about it, and that's why this committee has always said, like, if somebody comes to you and says, oh, this town does that, and we're like, yeah, and you could point to us doing something in the past that we wouldn't do today.
Yeah.
Just because you did something wrong in the past doesn't mean it sets precedent that it's okay to do it in the future, so.
And, the worry is always that, what if the DOR comes and says, we agree to, recommend funding something at town meeting and it gets approved, but it turns out it's not allowable. We haven't, we've funded things in the past that we now know are not fundable, but we make a good faith effort to stay abreast of new developments, and as we learn things, we make sure that we are up to speed with current practice. It's the best we can do, and we assume that the Department of Revenue would respect that if they, came to audit the books or whatever.
Thank you.
So with that, next agenda item. Okay, there's a select board agenda item from the 2nd of January. Talking about a warrant article to require a supermajority, a 2/3 majority for CPA expenditures involving improvements in private property. We were caught a little bit off guard by this.
No one came to you about it?
No, well, geez, the Friday before the meeting, I got a call from Andrew Dennington, just to let me know that it was on the agenda. Unfortunately, the second I was tied up, I wasn't able to go to the meeting. I understand. I'll speak on it a little bit, but I want to hear what everybody else has to say. I understand the reasoning behind it. People want to make sure the money is spent primarily on the town. The difficulty comes in when we're spending money to, the way it's worded, improve private property. This happens exclusively, at least in my experience in the committee here, with historical preservation. And the reason for that is most history, not all for sure, but most history is in private hands. And it's just the simple fact of the matter. The town, we certainly possess some of the history, the documents in the basement of town hall, the townhouse itself, the library, absolutely historically, the South Union School, important historic resources that we have funded, but 84 Main Street, the Buck family Civil War flag, the work we've done with the society in protecting its collection. These are things that are in private hands, and I'm concerned about making it more difficult to preserve Southborough's history. That's my only hesitancy with this article.
Does it apply to I'm not an expert here, but what about affordable housing? Aren't those owned by private entities in the end when we build affordable housing? Or not?
So, there are a number of things that aren't very clear. That's one of them. Another one is, it's like
doesn't own housing, right?
with 84 Main Street, I'll put in 1 second, absolutely. In 84 Main Street, did we pay for improvements to private property? Well, no, we purchased a preservation restriction.
Yeah, there was improvements in that.
Windows over there and.
Well, there were requirements within the preservation restriction, work that had to be done to the house, but the exchange of value was we paid roughly $1 million for a preservation restriction, so that to say I'm unclear how it would apply to that. Now, I know, Jim, I understand you've been involved in the discussions about this, and you had your hand up on.
Yeah, I can go back to the beginning. I'm the one that brought this forward to the select board. And as a citizen, I went to one of the meetings and I said some residents had approached me how this could be addressed. And I contacted the Attorney General's office to see was it prohibited. I read the statute. I read all the AG approvals of the town meeting, and this has not been addressed anywhere in any of the towns. So a resident wanted to come forward with a citizen petition. And I said, that's not the right forum for this. One thing, it's gonna be the end of the night, people are tired, and the language is exactly what you're talking about right now, has to be precise. What does it mean? What does it not mean? So I went to the select board and brought this forward. I said, I think it's a matter that should be discussed, and I think the right forum is in front of the select board to have the discussion and hold it. So there's a broad discussion, not that it just shows up at the last minute at a town meeting and people vote for something, not understanding the nuances of what they vote for. So I spoke to a number of the select board members afterwards, and they thought that it was a worthwhile discussion, and some of them thought it should be a higher number because it's a significant number. My own personal opinion is that I don't see any decisions that have been made that would have changed by a majority, except for St. Mark's, that won by 1 vote.
Right.
The plus of that is that I'm sorry. That's what I meant. You say my church, you won by 1 vote. So I just thought this is a discussion that should be held in the right forum. The select board, they didn't bring it up. I brought it up to Andrew again, said, hey, are you guys going to talk about this? And they did. I was unable to attend the meeting. Anyway, they just decided that they weren't going to bring it forward, that they thought it could be brought forward as a citizen petition. I think that's a wrong discussion. I think that's how it came to be. But I will just say one comment, and I independent of this. If I understand the viewpoint, I know from talking to prior chairs of this committee, it's that you view your vote on something to support an article, that it meets the criteria of the Community Preservation Act, not that it's the best way to use the town money. We used to that effect. You're saying it meets the criteria. But I'm telling you right now, and I said this to several residents, I said, no, they want us to spend the money on that. I said, no, they're telling you it meets the criteria, it's yours to spend it. I think your board has, either you should have a requirement by a bylaw change to require you to say those two things. It's almost like when historical had a way on my issues, they think it's a historical item and they support it. And the people in the town meeting don't understand that nuance. If you bring something forward because it meets the criteria, but you may think that it's not the best use of the money, or the money should be accumulated just because we have it in the fund. It should be accumulated because something else comes down the road. I think the hall would benefit from that advice from your board. So anyway, that's how it came to be. I don't know if it'll pop in the citizen petition. And again, I just think that the select board should have taken the issue and fleshed it out. That's all.
Thank you very much, Jim.
Yeah, well, I listened to the discussion, and Mr. Hamilton argued to allow the discussion to happen, which is your point, and I was disappointed that that didn't happen, like allow the discussion to happen. Because people don't know about people just don't know about CPC. So that's the other problem. So they get to town meeting and they're kind of, they're a lot of times you're gonna follow the masses. So I am also disappointed that the discussion just couldn't happen, because it'd be an opportunity also to educate people on CPC. Because just like you said today, like there's projects that we think are very worthwhile, but people are like, oh, you don't support it. Well, no, it's not. It's just, it doesn't meet the criteria. So that was one thing I just wanted to say. And then second, I'm curious, and I don't know if you can speculate on this by whoever brought it up to you. Because as a citizen, I'll say this, sometimes I go back and forth on 84 Main Street. I worry that property is gonna not be, I'm worried it's not gonna be taxable in the future. Let me just leave it that way. And so if that time ever does come, I will look back as a citizen and be like, wow, like what did we just do? So, yeah, I'll just say that. So I don't know if you can speculate that if there was a particular project that drove this citizen petition.
No, that's an excellent point, because somebody said, oh, that might be perceived as anti-South Historical Society. I said, no, in fact, the person never brought that up.
Yeah.
It was more along the lines that if you have a small attendance, somebody can pack the house.
Yeah.
So you have a skewed version of it. That was the intent. And honestly, from the items that I've seen that have passed, with the exception of the bell tower, they would easily pass a 2/3 vote. I mean, I look at, we had a Philly, the gymnasium when we had the golf course, when we had the other issues, those monies, the farm, when you look at Burnett House, I mean, crap, even if the threshold was 90%, they would have passed, so.
Just one point that you made. I know it wasn't directed at me, but it very well could have been, because I was in the funny position where with St. Mark's bell tower, we had the legal opinion from Aldo that it passed the 3-part test of the anti-hate amendment that we discussed here this evening. I was very, very conflicted about the project. I ended up voting in favor of moving it to town meeting, even though I knew full well that at town meeting I was going to be voting against it, because I ultimately decided that I can't replace the will of town meeting with my own personal opinion. Betsy Rosenblum, I think it was. I actually, the funny thing is I ended up presenting the project, and she kind of called me out and asked me what my personal opinion of it was. As I was standing up there presenting, I had to say that I was against it. It's a weird situation, but
Yeah.
So sort of the counter to what you said was that the ultimately we rely on the wisdom of town meeting for making these decisions, and I'm hesitant for the committee to start imposing its personal preferences of these projects on the town as a whole. That's the other side of the argument.
I think I hear you coming, but it might do well to say, our vote says it meets the criteria of the law. We are not giving an opinion whether we support or oppose the funding.
Yeah.
I think that would thread the needle.
Well, Freddie, you've had people ask you at town meeting for what your position was on
Actually,
the CPA article.
When I was chair, I had to present the lights, and then afterwards I voted against it, and someone ran up to the microphone and told town meeting, he just voted against it, and
That's what it was.
I was like, I have every right to vote my choice. I spoke as clearly in favor of putting it on the floor as the committee voted. I think this has always been something I think this committee could do better in other ways than not that's being discussed here, is that after this round of town meeting, I think with the new membership here, you can start to work on what's called a 5-year plan. And you assess all the needs and values of what CPA can fund in the town and where it goes, and meet with all the committees. The problem has been, we have that annual, we ask people to come in, tell us what their needs are, what their goals are. We advertise it as well as we can. In the old, back in the day, we used to put flyers up all over town. I mean, there's not a committee or board or nonprofit that doesn't get invited to attend that. And who shows up? We actually plan a regular meeting after the presentation because there's nothing to do because nobody comes. And then we hear somebody else saying, well, we know all these projects that are on the, but the CPC doesn't. So how can you make a plan if you don't know what's out there, and how do you plan for it? And if you have the plan, that's when you say, this is more, like Jim coming to us tonight, coming to you tonight saying, next year, if you had a bunch of those, I've seen other towns, they have a spreadsheet 5 years out, bonding, when this bond goes, what they're going to bond next, that is seriously planning, but you can't do it if you don't have projects in front of you. And it's something to move towards, but without that, I'm glad that some of the projects I thought weren't great projects got funded.
And can I
Please.
want to offer some frustration, Marguerite. I'm sorry to do this, that you're here. As I look at our agenda tonight and I look at discussions that are taking place on the select board agenda, and it takes 2 seconds to collaborate, put a phone call out and invite CPC to come and discuss CPC related items. frustrates me to no end, Marguerite. And again, this isn't directed at you, but to look at the agenda and to see some of the things we're discussing, that maybe CPC might have had a different take on what Jim had heard and was discussing. We weren't included in that. So it takes 2 seconds to say, hey, can you guys come and let's talk about the 3%, let's talk about this. Let's talk about, South Union, which, the draft warrant article, which, CPC was a big part of, the IMA. Again, I just look at things on here and think it would have taken 2 seconds to just extend an invitation to collaborate. I mean, this is the committee that governs CPC, and to have these discussions behind the scenes without this committee being a part is offensive to me.
So
And
this is really good. So I am here, even though it is a somewhat prickly atmosphere, granted.
well, just for me at the moment.
No, no, no.
No,
But I
I'm
will-
in there.
I will take it upon myself to look now at every agenda and to make sure to reach out to you.
And even not us,
Because this
just
is
other
again,
committees,
so much
do
time
it in general. Marguerite.
wasted in
Do
this
it
town.
for-
Exactly.
And the agendas in general, because when St. Mark's was discussed, and I know I made the point in the meeting, the word St. Mark's was nowhere on the agenda. And obviously, people in town would have been very interested to hear that we were entertaining selling the recreation center to St. Mark's, and it was a discussion topic that night. But if you looked at the agenda that night,
When
no
was-
way you would
when
have known.
was-
St. Matthews.
St. Matthew's, sorry, St.
Yeah, I
Matthew's,
didn't
sorry.
know
The
that.
church,
St.
St. Matthew's, the church, so about a month ago, it was on after all of the committee discussions and that we're gonna have the committee. Then all of a sudden, we get into a meeting and a few of us religiously attend now, because unfortunately this happens. And all of a sudden, St. Matthew's selling recreation center to St. Matthew's was being discussed in a huge topic, nowhere on the agenda. So I think in general,
Oh,
the
yeah,
agenda
yeah,
should
yeah,
be
yeah.
transparent.
Yeah,
That-
just,
that
again,
was-
it's inclusive. That's, we want everybody to work together. And again, I sat on the board, Marguerite, and I'm gonna tell you, I didn't always do it either. So I guess now I'm on the other side of the table and, I see it from
So
a
it's
whole
on me.
different
I
point.
know, I totally understand that.
Yeah, so just, again, and again, it's a broad spectrum. It's, if there's something open space related, they should be invited, even if they may not have anything to say, but to be respectful and be included in the discussion. That's all. Thank you. Sorry, I'll climb up myself.
No, thank you.
Duly noted.
Thank you.
Mind if I just jump in?
Yeah, please.
Not that we're talking to you, Marguerite, just, a general comment, so you can.
Oh, go ahead.
So I just wanted to reiterate, so as the historical rep of the
Yes.
committee, I do share Ben's concern about the increased threshold. That's how this whole discussion began. My limited time here, I've already seen that it's a challenge to get historical projects funded. With the anti-aid amendment, that automatically restricts a lot of projects from even going forward. And the ones that do go forward, like for example, 84 Main, has to be a big public campaign to get it to happen. And sometimes even then with the St. Mark's Church, it barely gets through the door. So I view it as a threat to historic preservation in the town. So I hope that it doesn't move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's coming forward as a citizen's petition. I'm very worried about the language because, we spend a lot of time learning about CPA and we get tripped up. Somebody who's more of a layperson than us, wading into this stuff, God help, it's confusing. So I guess we'll have to wait and see if one is introduced, what the text is, and we're gonna have to talk about it at town meeting. And we're gonna have to be prepared to address it.
And just to the whole, coming up with a process on the anti-aid amendment.
Yeah.
That's a deep dive, but if you have it all, it would be, I think it would be helpful for people to know, like, for the St. Mark's Bell Tower. This committee spent over 2 years. I mean, they came in with an application, did the whole thing, and came back a year later. And it was a long process and did a deep dive plus town council into, and they had a PR on it before we went to town meeting. I think it would be beneficial for the committee, but also for the public to know that that was the level of review.
Yep.
And protection for, and have some confidence in the committee doing their job, and I think having this document that's now become clear that you really do need to work on having, like, what are the steps? And, it has to go to, oh, that's the other thing, it has to go to town council to have his review. The committee has chosen to do their own review to decide if it's a project they want to fund before they go to town council. Because, you know, he has to give the review on projects they're going to fund, so. But having that information out there so that people know that that's what's been done. And that you know what you need to do, because, you know, there were some new things, the financials I had not known about before. Till Stewart wrote those, that you do absolutely need to know the financials of the private entity moving forward, that they can afford to move the project. You have to have that sort of knowledge that they can, one, make the project work, but be sustainable in the future.
So to Freddie's point, I've mentioned before that after we get through this town meeting, I think our next task needs to be, just like planning, conservation, ZBA, have an actual document that talks about submittal requirements, form and contents of an application, and a thorough description of the process with submittal deadlines and how much lead time and so forth. We don't have that. We need to put it together. And part of that is going to be, we're really going to have to do a deep dive on the 58 amendment, and for specifically for private projects. These are the things, you know, these are the submittals that are going to be required, and we need the applicant to explain to us why they're not running afoul of the NDA. And it's be a part of the application process. Although we're getting a little bit off the agenda item, but that's to come in the spring. Once we get through this difficult period, that will be our fun task for the spring.
Could I know it's like no comment from the floor, but I really would like to say this.
No, please.
And I think you and Freddie have both, and all of you have mentioned that there's no 5-year plan. I think part of the 2/3 or 3/5 vote at town meeting is because rumor on the street is that there's a number of other private entities in town that are gonna want CPC money. And this, maybe people are saying, like, the bell tower passed by 1 vote.
Yeah.
And it was because she went to the bathroom and her husband wasn't allowed to hold up 2 cards. And I think a lot of people were sort of, this process may be broken. So I think if there is a 5-year plan, as Freddie mentioned, it would really work out well, and to clarify the parameters of applying it.
And I really want to stress that we have been struggling to get one put together, but the very essence of the plan requires that folks, they don't have to have a 100% plan for a project 4 years from now. It just bubbled up in the back of their mind. Maybe in a few years we'll seek some funding for this. Let us know, and you know, we can start the conversation. Well, here's what we have, you know, next year, the year after, and the year after. Here's where you might fit into our expected funding. We would love to do that. We dream of having that ability, honestly.
So maybe a consultant of some kind to help you, even people wanted to put in with a placeholder. I
Yeah.
think we may, you know.
Yeah.
Do
So-
you need a consultant for that?
No, you need people to come forward.
Yeah,
Because it's a lot of money and it's a lot of important decisions, so.
it is, and we're going to continue discussing it and working on it. And as Freddie said, I can't stress this enough. The amount of outreach that we do every year, every board, committee, commission, every department head, nonprofits throughout the town, anybody who we could conceivably think of as possibly having maybe a project,
and it's still
notification,
confusing.
and
Is there something that other towns are doing to get those results that we should be doing too?
I don't think this is the conversation.
yeah,
Yeah, maybe not. Okay, I
yeah,
withdraw that.
just only because it's an excellent question, but only because we're starting to run low on time here.
I'll call you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the next agenda item, which is it's entitled Discussion Select Board Proposal to Raise CPA Surcharge to 3%. I mentioned that With our last hearing, I mentioned that was invited by Kathy Cook, Andrew Dennington, and Andrew Bath to meet with them to discuss a variety of things. That was one of the things that we discussed. And I discussed it with Andrew on the phone this morning briefly. Before even getting into that, I just wanted to talk to the committee about my meeting informally with other folks in town, members of the select board, capital planning, advisory. First, I want to tell you how I view my role in that and how I handle it, but then I want to get your feedback. So there's a feeling amongst some folks active in town government that I don't share, but that the chair of a board, committee, or commission speaks for that body. And I don't share that opinion. I think it might be a little frustrating to meet with me sometimes in these informal meetings because my answers tend to be, that's interesting, I'll bring it up with the committee when we next meet. And I wanted to assure you that that's how I conduct myself. I think it's my impression that some chairs may, I'm not pointing fingers at anybody specifically here, but that there's a belief that they do sort of represent their body and can make decisions for them. I wanted to assure you that I'm not doing that I don't share that belief. And I think it's helpful to take the phone call, go meet with the person, and bring back what I learned to the committee to share, go forward with. But if you ever feel uncomfortable with that, please tell me. And or if you feel that somebody else from the committee should be accompanying me, or what, anything. Wanted to get that out there. I only bring that up because, you know, as I said, both about 3 weeks ago and then again this morning spoke with Andrew about that. One point he made was he offered a correction that this isn't a select board proposal because they actually haven't conducted a vote on this. We had discussed this sort of informally, and I think the general, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the general feeling was number one, the current climate after a couple of years of 8% inflation, asking people to raise their taxes might be a bit of a stretch. And that secondly, even in the best of times, in order to make it palatable, it really needs to be driven by some wildly popular project that needs this additional funding. And then also that has to be accompanied with a terrific amount of community outreach to build support. And I think we discussed that we really didn't see any of that here. I think the hope is that well, first, it kind of is a select board proposal because we certainly didn't propose this. I think that the idea came from, it sounds like predominantly Kathy and Andrew Bath. It's an idea that they had. And I know that the hope is that community preservation will become the point on this, that we will go out to the transfer station on Saturday and collect signatures and get it on the ballot and do all the public outreach and so forth. And I guess with that said, I just want to open up the discussion to the committee.
Yeah, start down there. Start.
Yeah, start down here. Okay. So I'll just say that I am in favor. In general, I haven't seen a very specific proposal, but of increasing the surtax from 1% to 3%. A lot of other towns and cities around the state have done that. It's a real way to maximize the amount of state federal matching funds that you get. So I think in general, I'm in favor. I guess the question that we're really dealing with is a political question, right? About like timing you don't want to strike too soon, and if people aren't ready, and then it'll fail, and then, you know, you don't want to come back for a couple cycles or something like that, so, it does seem a little soon for May. Would this be town meeting or ballot?
This would be, on the ballot in May.
Okay. So, I appreciate the intent of it, and I guess I'm open on the more political question about timing. If we want to come together, CPC and others want to come together and make this happen, I mean, it is still 5 months away, so who knows? So I'm not opposed to it right now, but, and in general, I support the idea, so that's where I am.
Thank you.
I would largely echo that I am in favor of this as a principle of increasing the surcharge to further support the worthy projects that we get. I think it's both a political and a process issue for me. And I think a lot of what came across in some of the email thread that we saw about going the signature collecting route versus going to town meeting in order to get it, you know, on the ballot in May. Our conversations, to your point, that I think we as a committee would like to be part of making that decision and when it should happen, because it's not, oh, let's give it a try. If it doesn't pass, it doesn't pass. There's a real cost to bringing this up at the wrong time. And it is, I would say, somewhat frustrating. And there has been a lot of work put behind this before it came to us.
Yeah.
And so there are numbers here and points here and well put together information that I would think we would like to have more input on, and it feels like the time is compressed for that to happen, and so that is a real challenge for me in supporting this effort.
I think you captured a lot of.
Yeah,
what I feel.
I was gonna say, I
Well,
don't know that any of us need to say anything else. Yeah.
Very good.
Others?
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel the same way. It's in principle, as they said, it's a great idea. I'd love it to go to 3% at some point. Whether or not it's the right time, I don't know right now. I'd be open to either way, once we, I feel like if we want to do it, it feels like we need all of us to be like, yes, let's do it, right? Like, so we can get behind it and push it. If we're all like, maybe we should do it, then probably we should.
I almost feel like we would need a joint meeting between select board and CPC to talk about the merits of doing it now.
Right.
If we,
In the mechanics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I'd like to propose, given all that we have to do, to ask to be deferred for a year. Come up with our 5-year plan, because as a taxpayer, I looked at this and quite frankly, I'm in an industry not doing good right now. Layoffs happening.
Yeah.
Yesterday announced a bunch of them. It's prickly time. So when I saw this, I immediately went to how much is it gonna cost me? What's gonna get me? And to all the points you made, I won't repeat them, but I think we need time if we're gonna be expected to advocate for this, to understand it. We owe the town a 5-year plan to say what this money is probably gonna go to, instead of, we're not sure. We need to address the affordable housing issue, because they're gonna be like, what the heck? You've got this money that you've been sitting on for how many years? So I just, as a personal taxpayer, I think it's jumping the gun. And then as a committee member, everything that you said so well.
So, I talked about at our last meeting, the list of, projects that Andrew took the time to put together that, he hoped would be funded with this, this additional, moving up to 3%. And, I think it gives us some insight into the motivation behind, why.
But these numbers are,
Kristen, will you even?
No,
so there's
yeah.
all recreation, did recreation
No.
give
So-
some of this?
No.
And so some of the other points that I would make are, the overwhelming majority of these are simply not fundable under the community preservation
Yeah.
Act. Like you see a number of turf fields as one example, that we can't fund, or the Route 9 pedestrian bridges, which I would
You can fund a
love.
portion.
Yeah.
But
You can fund a portion of her field work, but that's
yeah,
a different point.
also the, what is it, well, we don't have the time to go through
yeah.
item by item, but of community center,
Yeah.
of $27 million, it's simply, 90% or so not funded. But when I said it gives some insight maybe into the motivation for asking for this. I think it's a misunderstanding of the purpose of the Community Preservation Act. We exist to fund the projects that during the normal municipal budgeting process get elbowed off the table by the time the schools, public safety, public works, the administration of town government, and these other things are funded. There's nothing left to do these projects that make our community a richer place to live. Purpose of CPA is to fund these special projects that make our community special. This makes me think that the intent here is to treat the CPA trust fund as simply an adjunct to the town's general fund to plug holes in the budget.
Absolutely.
And I don't think that's the intent of the act, and I don't think that was the intent of the town meeting when the act was adopted here in town at 1%. And I'm worried for all the reasons given that this is the wrong time to make the ask. And I further suspect that it's the wrong reason.
And if I can add to that, Ben, too, I think Kristen made a very valid point at the last meeting about looking at potentially replacing the school.
Yeah.
Which is gonna have a huge impact on taxes.
Yeah.
And I think that again, discussions taking place, the discussion should be here. It should be with the CPC saying, how can we get your buy-in, or is this something you would be interested in coming forward with? And these are the benefits. This is a very public forum here.
Yeah.
That is very transparent, very open, and the residents that do watch the meetings, again, it creates a dialogue. These meetings create a dialogue. And then I will say, from what you first started out with, that you came to this committee after you met, and you were very open and honest about the discussion that was had. So I have complete faith with you going and having these discussions, because it wasn't that you held anything back. You immediately came and you spoke to us and you told us there was a list and whatnot, and we have it. So again, I just want you to know that I am 100% comfortable in the job that you're doing and you attending these meetings, because you're not making decisions for us, you're bringing it back to us and informing.
Yeah, well, thank you, Lisa. Like I said, if anyone at any point feels a change should be made, wants to accompany me or whatever, then just let me know.
I would just say to you, if you ever feel like you need support from
Right.
us, it's like,
Well, thank you.
I echo everything Linda said.
Can I throw in something on this?
Yeah, please.
When this was first brought up, I spoke to, I believe it was Kathy Cook, and shared an offer of advice on, not advice, but to go over what we did to get it passed the first time, because that was done when it passed. There had been a town initiative at town meeting, it passed town meeting, and then it had to go to you have to vote on it. And I guess this was before I was involved at all. I didn't even know about it. I don't even know if I lived here. It passed town meeting, but nobody campaigned for it, and it failed at the polls. So then when a few of us got together and just thought it'd be a great idea to bring it back, and we had to do a citizens petition because we didn't have enough time between the April town meeting and the town election. The reality was, if it had passed town meeting and they voted in favor at town meeting, it wouldn't have been valid because they didn't have enough time anyhow. Nobody had looked at that. But what we did and I think it was 2 years, and I know I definitely know it sucked up 6 months of our lives. We reached out to all of the groups, all of the CPA entities in town, nonprofits. We reached out to all of the housing groups, open space, historical, got their buy-in and on board. And that took a huge amount of effort. We were at Heritage Day, we had library presentations, we had, it was not, the dog and pony show. And to get everyone to buy in, I don't think this is something you just get the petition and put on town meeting floor. And the fact is, I know our campaign was really a lot of open space advocates. I mean, that's where two of the members came from, but we had a historical person. I mean, it was just a citizen group. We were no committee. I don't think we were on committees at the time. And I look at this list and I'm like, as an open space chair of the Open Space Preservation Commission, I'm like, this doesn't interest me at all. No one came and talked to us. No one asked what we would want to spend money on. And who makes a list without talking to the stakeholders?
And that's just what I want to add to that, and it won't be a dead horse, but looking at these recreation projects. I mean, I can tell you right now, 9/11 field turf replacement, we have a revolving fund. Like, that's a whole, we went through a lot to make sure that we would be able to self-fund that.
Can I interject for one
Baseball,
second? I just wanna, you know, I want to defend Andrew. This was something he didn't do, capital planning or advisory, I forget which. They didn't meet as a body and put this list together. This was he was very clear, this was his brain dump. And he understood it was an imperfect document. So I don't wanna beat on Andrew.
Okay,
I
so definitely not.
Yeah, okay,
But more just to show the disconnects that we have right now.
yeah,
Because they put forward and discussed at a board meeting, and I assume that this might have been an article in it. And they're putting it out into the public without discussing with us, when I can tell you, you know, again, I won't go through the whole thing, but you can't do a walking trail around
Right.
the field, there's no number. Like, you know, I could,
Yeah.
so it's just, it's kind of insulting.
And I will add one final point, Ben, if I may.
please.
So knowing what we've heard here, and Grant, I as well support the concept of doing this. I think, as Freddie said, you've got to do it right. And I think, Ellen, you said this as well. I think going into a ballot, potentially in May, and CPC sitting here tonight saying, we don't think this is time for a variety of reasons to do it, I think is a huge, huge mistake. And I think if the public's aware that CPC does not support this at this time, I think it's a mistake to bring forward.
And the last part I would say is that by the time that, I mean, we're using up all of our bandwidth getting ready for town meeting. By the time we have gotten all of our articles together and have gotten them presented at town meetings, the amount of time that we would have left.
Yeah.
It simply doesn't, it doesn't work. So, unless anybody feels strongly, I'm just not going to call for a motion on this. And I think once we have the bandwidth to actually have this, I'm sorry, were you raising your hand?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I didn't want to cut you off. Though.
Oh, no, please, I was wrapping things up, so before I do that.
Just one last quick point. I do think that if it's something that we think is worthwhile and interested beyond May in doing, that we should be planning for that.
Yep.
So let's just say 2 year, you know, a year and a half or 2.5 years, however many years we think it will take. That, you know, if we agree that it's a worthwhile goal, that we should be taking action to get there. Agree in some capacity.
Working with advisory and select board and.
Absolutely.
Putting on a list of projects, because how do you go to town meeting and say we go to the polls and say we want more money, and here we're saying,
we don't know
we
what-
don't know what projects we have.
Yeah, that's
Like pretty,
And I think that's part of the discussion when everybody comes together. And I
Yes.
think that's the main thing, is there needs to be collaboration.
project driven, either one big headline project or several other projects that have popularity within town would allow us to effectively build support. So I think the discussion should maybe start in earnest this spring, when we have some bandwidth to take it on and start doing some planning. Okay. All right, next up, closing out projects, finalized forms, next steps. Couple of projects out there that are done. There's some leftover money. Now, there was some question about how to recapture that money. There was the feeling from accounting that we needed to do a warrant article. Freddie did another deep dive on this, working with the coalition and speaking with Carla and getting a legal opinion. It turns out we do not need a warrant article. In fact, all we need is a vote of the committee.
so. Were those a handout?
Yep.
Does everyone have it?
Yep.
Can I look at, I lost mine. They're here somewhere. So what we had was originally a form the committee made a while ago. And then we had a form accounting sent us afterwards, which was a little different. And then just got legal opinion from town council. So Betsy helped me put together a it looks like this. It, might be in back of the budget. Anyhow, we combined all three. We did a little Frankenstein, cutting and pasting, so we went through two of the bigger items, and then I'm going to present them to Carla for her review, if you vote to do that, and then we'll know when to move forward with other ones. So one of the first things is recreation. So if you look at the form, because that's the committee's vote is not just these projects, but the first, the formatting, right? If it makes sense to you. We have, you know, the name of the project, you need the town meeting it was approved at, the account number, the money's in, the balance, and then who's the proponent, and then these questions were from accounting, was, you know, funded by bonding, expenses within approved scope, all invoices have been submitted for payment. And then we have where we're returning the funds to, and then we have a little blurb here, which is sort of what your vote would be. Maybe that, so we confirmed, this actually came, you know, recreation has said the project's done, it's all signed off, we have the signage, the, you know, everything has been check from us, the MOU. So it's time to return the funds. So this says it, and then, the last thing is the funds were appropriated and from what account, and then we're returning them to that. The only thing to know, every year, if we don't use all the anticipated revenue, and we're going to be, this year I'm starting to do it, that we spend anticipated revenue first. But what we used to do is put it in this thing called the budgeted reserve. That would be in the next year's account for you to spend. But then at the end of the year, it goes back to the general fund. So where you see this came out of the fiscal year 2021 budgeted reserve, that account doesn't exist anymore. That got dumped into the fund balance. So that's where we, you know, where it was appropriated out of, but we have to put it into the like account. Then you have, and it gets trickier when you take monies out of different accounts, but we can deal with that when it happens. I've been told you don't, as long as you spent the restricted funds, you don't have to like divvy up the money. You know, like if there was some from historic reserve, you don't have to put some back in as long as you spent all of the money from the historic reserve. But that's a vote you can make. Anyhow, if you go to the next, the second one. This one was a little trickier. This came up. Town treasurer told us there was some money hanging out in a old bond account, short-term interest that hadn't been used, and that's the best answer I have, so I hope that's good enough. We went to town meeting, we thought we needed some short-term interest, and it turned out we didn't, and then in 3 subsequent articles, there was sets left over, so we're hoping this will take care of the whole thing, so that it's putting the money back. You know, the 56 cents, the 89 cents, the 98 cents, we're just, you know, it's all being rolled back into the account that we looked up. Carla has very nicely kept a book of all the warrant, CPA warrant articles. So we don't have to go digging up 19, you know, not 19, but what was it, 2017, but some of them might be older than that. Finding the warrant articles, because that's where you find out where the money came out of. So they sent us this, you know, 50-page list of all the warrant articles. So that made this much easier to find out which account it came out of, and then we have to put it back in the same one. So if you vote to say you want to have a draft motion, did I for one of them?
Freddie, there's a typo on the second one. Last sentence, the funds were appropriated from the CP Historic Preservation Fund. It's an add instead of and.
Oh.
Just one quick typo. Sorry.
What is it?
The word and instead of add, last sentence.
And we are returning.
And we are returning.
So
It does R too.
So it looks like the motion is, for instance, the first one would be motion to return the unspent and unencumbered balance of community preservation appropriation. And close the CPA fund financing source from which the appropriation was funded and return the funds to the CPA fund balance.
If Betsy captured that, you can watch the video.
That's awesome.
Right. And I can
She
read
may
it off
want
the
the,
thing.
she may want the minutes
Okay,
to make this happen. So
gotcha.
this may be a longer term process.
So would you like me to say that again more slowly?
Yes.
I am looking for a motion to.
Yep.
Return the unspent and unencumbered balance of the community preservation appropriation.
Yep.
And to close the CPC fund financing source from which the appropriation was funded. And that the returned funds be returned to the CPA fund balance.
Okay.
So
We have a motion from Kristen. The second from Lisa.
Okay, and we're going to write this up so that that motion, we have a few of these we're going to be doing once we get rolling.
Yes.
After. Down the road. I'll tell you one of the things about this, we've been wanting to move on it, so it shows action.
Yep.
Um,
But can I just, for once, can I just interject 1
yeah,
second?
sorry,
All those in favor?
oh, sorry, sorry.
Okay, unanimous. I'm sorry.
I'm just thinking about, this has been weighing heavy on us.
Oh,
to
yeah.
Get it done. So it may come back that we may need to submit the minutes. And that we'll have a standard motion. And you'll see on the next one why this might be also interesting.
Okay, let me see if I can capture this one. Looking for a motion. This is with respect to short-term interest on the bond for 84 Main Street. We're looking for a motion to return the unspent and unencumbered balance as recommended by the town treasurer. And that these funds be returned to the CPA Historic Preservation Reserve Fund. So moved.
second,
All right, motion from Brett, second from Lisa. All those in favor? Unanimous.
Okay, so here's where this one can come in. In the past, we thought we had to go to town meeting maybe, and then, it would just be, but, Mark Purple sent me town council's opinion or his advice, and it doesn't have to go, but I just wanted to be really sure, so I emailed back to say, and, Mark responded, no town meeting.
Yeah.
Which, I just double checked to make sure we read legal and say,
Oh, yeah.
what is he saying? So the point is, as soon as we get this approved through the town accounting department, those funds are back in the account. If it is in a timely way, we could use this historic preservation money to pay off to
Offset a
put
bond.
towards a bond. Or it can stay in the account to next year, and I'm gonna recommend, given that this might take a while, and then I'd have to redo the whole budget and redo the warrant article, that we're okay leaving it till next year, because you've got bonds coming in next year anyway.
And we have enough funding available for
Yeah.
what's before us, so we're not under a crunch. Right.
And I think there was some concern from other parties that we might, well, it was from us too, we didn't have enough to fund everything.
Right.
And now that we do, we're not trying to, squeeze every
Right.
lemon, or whatever.
Right.
So, thank you. So I'm going to fix the typo.
And
And
then I
see
can-
if they
can,
need something else.
And I can give you the signatures on those. Looks like you've got a place for chairman's signature, so I can,
Yeah, but I'll have to fix the typo,
so,
but you can, sign the other one. You can sign one of, easier to do both. at
yeah,
once.
we'll do both of them. Yeah, just,
Okay, all right, thank you so much.
All right, next up, this was another select board agenda item from the 2nd of January. This is the IMA, or the intermunicipal agreement for the Algonquin Athletic Complex project, and this is simply the agreement of how the funding for this would be split between the two communities. And we went and complicated things by doing part of our funding through Community Preservation Act. This is another one of the things that Freddie has spent an incredible amount of time figuring out for us. In getting us on the right track, and it sounds like trying to recall here.
Which one are we talking about?
We're talking about the
Oh, the
IMA,
IMA.
and there was a worry that because the project is being bonded, there was a worry that the bond payments were going to be made with CPA funds that would have required potentially a 2/3 vote at town meeting rather than a simple majority vote for conventional funding. But anyhow, Freddie dove into this also, and I'll let you tell the tale.
So here is to Lisa's point where simple call would have been easier. But you see that on the agenda and you're like, nobody told us that they were doing the IMA for the CPA funding when you read the warrant article. But it turns out that the IMA is, we were very, the committee wrote a very good warrant article. Everything was really clear, what is allowed, and the IMA followed that to the T. So what they did do, I think we thought we were going to get bills sent to us for this is for the pickleball at Algonquin, and that we would pay those, and that the contingency, the concern is the contingency, there was no overages, they never came to us, so the contingency is still there, right? So what they ended up doing in the IMA is and so it's a different way of financing. You've got two towns, they had to figure out the shares, but they're just asking for the lump sum that is the amount that was this CPA warrant article funded without the contingency. So that will go. And so the next step would be to contact the project proponent to, when is this IMA going to be finalized, and when are you expecting that payment? Because at that point, we will then not take back, but we will close out the account for the contingency of, was it 26,000 or something like that? So it's just one of those things that you don't want to read that the payment for the CPA project is part of that IMA. And that's what's written into this language. It just would be nice if the DPC would have known it, so I didn't have to spend as much time reading and researching and worrying that it wasn't done the way we had written. But it is done correctly, and that would be the next step. Find out when we can take back the contingency into the account payment. Good job, Freddie. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next up, review citizen petitions for South Union School. An item on the select board's agenda. Apparently, and I don't know him, but a gentleman named Joe Plummer had put forth, or talked about putting forth a couple of citizens petitions relative to the South Union School. So this morning when I spoke with Andrew Dennington, he said that he had spoken with Mr. Plummer just a couple of days ago. Palmer, excuse me. Excuse me, Joe Plummer. Mr. Palmer, excuse me. And Mr. Palmer said that because the select board has committed to putting together a committee to review the disposition of the school, that he was going to withdraw the warrant articles. So I guess that hasn't officially happened yet. Oh, yes,
Can we put
please.
the town clerk hat on for a second?
Please.
Mr. Palmer came in the office today and advised that he would like to withdraw those citizen petitions. But once a citizen petition is submitted, it's no longer his. It belongs to everybody. So it has to be addressed to the town floor. So it will come up on the town floor. I spoke to him about it. I said, there's different parliamentary ways to make it go away, but I said, you need to be prepared. If this is introduced and make a motion to definitely postpone, somebody could want to discuss the issue. So my thoughts to you, board, is you might prepare as if it's going to be discussed on the floor.
Okay, thank you.
Is it that reasoning in fact correct? Because that committee was supposed to be set up, but I was told the Open Space Commission was going to have a seat, and then I was told that they weren't setting it up. So if they're not setting it up, then he may still want to put that on the town meeting floor.
So,
Does anyone know what it is?
What
it
is,
needs to be set up, right?
because Marie, could you update everybody though on the status of the committee?
Twenty-one Highland, okay, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 blocks. And nobody is named on it yet. Citizen at large, resident within a half mile, resident within a half mile, recreation rep, planning board rep, historical commission rep, open space preservation.
Has a request gone out to those committees, do you know? To fill those seats?
I don't know that,
I don't believe so.
Sounds like, well.
but it's right here on the, it's right here on the town, it's right here on the town website,
I'm sorry, Margaret.
it's right here on the town website. Under,
So there is a committee that will be
It
filled.
was four.
It's- doesn't-
Yes.
Yes.
Nobody's on it yet.
Or if
Yes.
it's not active,
Yep.
it sounds like.
But to Jim's point, it's gonna appear in the warrant. I will admit to not realizing that would be the case, and I didn't spend the time going over the warrant articles. I'm not able to give any kind of presentation on the nuts and bolts of them.
I have one question. I mean, the gist of them is to prevent the sale of
Yeah.
the buildings prematurely before, before exploring other opportunities as we wanted with the committee, excuse me. I think a key question, and this is where it gets complicated for me, and if you're on a meeting, you know I wasn't happy about it. St. Matt's came up in a meeting, wasn't on the agenda. Anyway, you paint it, was not on the agenda, came up, some people heard about it, they decided to disband the committee. The next meeting, the
I'm
next
sorry,
meeting,
they is who?
I'm sorry, the board,
Which board are we talking?
the select board. And so then there was another meeting that I couldn't attend.
They weren't gonna disband it, technically, they were just not gonna create it.
I think they had voted to actually create the committee at one point. So if there was a vote at one point, which I mean, it doesn't matter, right? Like
Okay.
it's semantics, but either way, then there was a meeting where St. Matt's was brought up. And then I think I missed the meeting where the committee was maybe whatever. The next meeting I was at, there was no mention of the committee, nor was there any mention of St. Matt's, but you went into executive session. And I asked, was it to discuss St. Matt's? And presumably by the answer it was. Because we may influence, the public could influence negotiations, real estate transactions.
Well, that's not really technically accurate, but okay.
Well, correct me where I'm wrong.
It's not that the public will influence negotiations, but that when the town is going to acquire or sell property, sometimes it's done in executive session because the ability to do that may be impacted if it's public.
Right. So you can understand as the public and every committee, every committee commission can be involved, how that felt very behind closed doors.
The agenda didn't list
was.
the parcel, which, based on the Wayland case, I think you have to list on your executive session where the property is. Jim, am I wrong? And based on the Wayland case, you have to have as much detail as possible.
I'm not sure. I don't know the answer.
I think that's an important question to get an answer to, but my concern here from a CPC perspective,
Yeah.
take away my, recreation hat, take away my citizen hat. From a CPC perspective, we've invested in that property. As there's been CPC funding for that
Well,
property.
technically you haven't, that you have directed that the town do it.
Okay, you're right, I did not.
It's not
personally do it.
your property.
The
it's the town's.
CPC committee recommended and then the town subsequently voted. We followed the process.
Right.
So now this parcel is being discussed by the board to go up for sale, which obviously, the strong feelings about that from previous meetings. But additionally, I had heard, and I don't know if it's true because we're in executive session, that there might have been some sense that we could apply some CPC funding almost similar to what we did on Main Street to help with enhancing the property.
Okay,
however
so
everybody-
Kristen, the actual thing on this is, it can't get sold until the town meeting agrees
Okay,
to it.
but we're being
So-
asked to prepare for potential discussion, but we don't even know the details or how or where CPC funding may be involved. Because you're in executive session and we know nothing, but we're supposed to prepare for it to be brought up on the town meeting floor. This is broken,
Every
it's very
committee-
broken.
Every committee and board is constituted so that they can go into executive session.
I understand that,
discuss
but you're putting us in a very
personnel,
bad position and you're looking like
Or
you're doing
real
this
estate.
behind closed doors, but you are.
No, but I mean, this is something every board can do.
I understand that, but it still doesn't look good and it's still leaving us all out and we're still being asked to prepare a position. And I'm sorry, this is,
I mean, I
This
see
is not
what,
you
I see what you
personally.
mean, but if,
this is just a broken process. And now we're being asked to be ready to discuss something that we don't even have the details on at town meeting. It's,
Are we being asked to do that?
so, well, we were just advised you might want to be prepared at these.
no, I don't think you're grokking this. We're all trying to make the town run. If there is a real estate discussion that the parties involved with who are, maybe they want to buy it, maybe they want to sell it, maybe they want to turn it into a dog run, I don't know. But they've asked that it be done, not publicly yet because they're not sure about what is happening. What are we supposed to
Well,
do?
that's wonderful. Have to go to RFP anyway.
Yeah, it has to go to anything, and
So
it's not. I'm
Let me ask
sorry
Jim a
that you
question.
feel that way, but
is this
There's-
warrant,
if there's a
certainly
personnel
not just
problem,
me,
we're
and
not gonna discuss
I'm
it.
very representative of.
is
Anyway,
this, is the
this is off the
citizens petition
agenda.
advisory in nature, Jim?
Absolutely.
So it doesn't bear any weight whatsoever.
Okay.
I think that's a key point to make here, as we think about what we need to do to maybe discuss this or not discuss it, it's advisory.
I haven't reviewed the warrant. Is there any article being put forth by the select board involving the recreation center property?
Okay, Freddie, you had
I think where the CPC at the next meeting when we have these warrant articles decided, may wish to go is we were preparing to have a comment letter on the disposition of the building before. We had a meeting with Shopsy, all the stakeholders were there. Following that, we were told there was going to be a committee set up. So everyone sort of stopped being talking together. And now that committee, I guess, maybe is set up, maybe isn't, but it's never been
in panel. Yeah.
impaneled. Maybe, and now we're hearing that there's executive session talking about real estate on the building, sales. We know that's happened, whether it's executive session or not, everyone in town is talking about it. And by who. It would make sense for this committee to go forward on their opinion, so no matter what happens at town meeting, you are prepared with what your opinion is, because you had previously spent a lot of time and effort on working through projects to recommend to town meeting and had a vested interest in the past. You didn't fund it, but you recommended to town meeting and did a deep dive into that. And, recently had, as a matter of fact, we're aware that the promises made for those warrant articles have not been upheld because there was a guarantee by the town to keep the building in good condition. And we also heard that they are not maintaining it. Simple things like painting the trim. And that was obligated under facilities to do that in the warrant article that funded the work that was done. So I think you want to review all of that again.
So it sounds like this ought to appear on the agenda for our next meeting. At which point I will have read the articles,
Maybe not the next.
the
Yeah,
24th.
Yeah, after we handle it.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. The chair report, all I had to report was my conversation with Andrew, which we've already gone through in detail. Actually, let me put some notes, let me just make sure I didn't. Oh, he asked on behalf of the select board, to meet for the CPC to come to a select board meeting or some number of members on on either January 30th or February 6th. This would be after the warrant articles have received legal review, to talk with the select board about the articles, and all boards, committees, and commissions submitting articles are getting the same request. I told them that the 30th of January is, given how much we have to get through, it's probably a little unlikely. The 6th would be more likely. Again, it's, I don't, unless we have, some sort of, split on a particular warrant article, if so far, we've been, unanimous. That being the case, I don't think we need to have an actual joint meeting with all members present. I would certainly endeavor to attend, and would love company, on whichever of those dates it ends up being.
So it'd be after we vote to approve or deny.
Yeah, so
application? Okay,
I think it would be, after we get legal advice. And I think by that point, we will have also voted to move them to town meeting or not. That was the only other part of the conversation I hadn't told you about. Other than that, nothing else to report. Next up, has everyone had a chance to go through the minutes from our last meeting?
Yep.
Frankly, they looked great. I didn't come across anything. Did anybody come across any edits, any typos?
I have some edits.
Okay.
I sent them-
I was gonna say, I'm like, looked at those two.
So I sent them to Betsy, though.
Okay.
Run through them quickly, if that's okay.
That's true.
So first one is in the paragraph underneath project presentation by Southborough Historical Society. About halfway down, there are 2 historical features that I deleted the word "do," so it should just be that remain inside. Further down that page, I had the last paragraph. It should be the second to last line on the page. Should be owned property is not dedicated to recreation. So add a D. So on page 2, about halfway down, Dean, it should be Lamsa instead of Lamis.
Oh.
Lamsa. I can slow down if you want.
Second page, halfway down.
Yeah, it's like 5 or 6
Oh,
paragraphs.
there we go.
Yep. And then simple thing later on in that paragraph, the town of Southborough should be capitalized.
Oh, gotcha.
The next paragraph, just because it hadn't been referenced before, and there seems to be confusion about IGR and what it stands for. I said page 55 of Division of Local Services Informational Guideline Release, parentheses, IGR. So that way, as you refer to it throughout the rest of it, you'll know what it's referring to. Page 3, the top paragraph, 3rd line down. Lynn Spencer of Spencer and Voigt. I think Voigt is spelled VOGT.
I'll check on that.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you're right. UIGT, yep.
Okay. I'm almost done, sorry.
Sorry.
Page 4, top of it, the second word on the page, it should be but, B, T, and G.
Yep.
Right, 1 sec. Oh, the last thing I had, this is just a question. Ben, I know that at our last meeting, you were talking about your meeting with Kathy Cook and Andrew Pfaff, and
Yes.
I know that you had mentioned that someone's name incorrectly,
Yeah.
you corrected it later, and I just.
I
wanted to
got
make sure.
confused. It was Andrew Pfaff.
Okay,
We met with, and, yeah, Jason Malinowski had, you know, he had sent me email earlier in the day about the same subject, and I was just completing the two things. It was
Okay.
Andrew Pfaff,
so it should be Andrew Pfaff.
Yes,
not-
yes.
Okay,
correct.
Oh, okay, all right.
and that's it for me.
Okay.
3 minutes.
Thank you. Anybody else?
I have a few more.
Okay.
I also very minor. You know. You do dedicated.
I think I did, yes.
So then page 2. The paragraph that begins suggestion made to send this application.
Wait, say a little louder.
Sure, page 2 suggestion made to send this application to the coalition.
Yep, yep.
The last line where it says town council.
Yep.
It should be council with an SEO.
All right. Got it.
2 paragraphs later, page 55 of the IGR.
Yep.
Third line there where it says send the relative pages. It should be relevant.
Oh, yes.
And then.
Late.
No. The following sentence where it starts, Benjamin Smith explains, I wanted to clarify here and then in the following list, we're talking about supplemented funds or supplanted.
Supplanted, correct.
Good catch.
That's a very good catch.
And where is that?
So that's the sentence starting, Benjamin Smith explained that work under contract,
Planted,
yes, supplanted, and then 2 paragraphs down, number 2, breakdown of how the money has been earmarked.
Yep.
Sure, we are not supplanting this project.
Got it. Perfect. Oh,
Page 3. The last paragraph starting Kevin Miller noted.
Mhm.
The 4th sentence does not have a venue, should say 4.
okay.
And then following page, first paragraph, but the JSS is building a venue. The last sentence there where it says they belong at the SHS and hope, blah, blah. He also requested that says the standard of Secretary of the Interior standards. Get rid of the standard of at the beginning.
Oh, gotcha.
And then bottom of page 4, second to last paragraph. The last line there, the scanning portion cost is there's an extra comma in the 1250.
Oh, look at that. Okay. Thank you.
And then
That'd be a period, was that supposed to be a period?
I think, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Page 5. Under review revised draft budget, the state match came in at 21%. On the middle of the paragraph that starts Freddie Gillespie. The 5th line, it says 4,034.
Oh, right. We should split up on your side.
And then last one was just to confirm what Grant had asked about under chair report, the list created by Jason Reynolds. Want to confirm then that that's the source of the list.
The list was, it was put together by Andrew Pfaff.
Okay,
Oh, it was.
It was, yeah.
that's it. Thank you, Betsy.
Thank you. Sorry.
No,
So
so
better. I'm telling for anyone who was just listening and heard all those edits, these were a very complicated and complex set of minutes for Betsy to capture, and she did an amazing job.
Yes, 6 pages, single space.
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
yeah.
but it was not just how much it was, but it was to get through it all.
Oh, no, I can
Yeah.
interpret.
It was a very technical meeting.
I just have a quick question, process wise, are we allowed to send edits for minutes because they're administrative to the committee in advance, or is that?
You know, I think it's just a good policy to not send, the only arranging for dates for meetings is sort of my personal policy.
Okay.
But sending edits directly to Betsy is absolutely.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
Yeah,
We could
I,
save
you
some
know,
time to
yeah,
have
I
it
think,
be- yeah.
I think you'd be in the clear doing that, just, I try to like stay as far back from the line as I
Sure.
can personally.
Okay,
I know most committees don't allow it.
okay. Thank you.
I would say, tagging on to a prior review of a project, it came up in the minutes, which reminded me. I found out from Stuart that the non-supplanting rule is only for government. So that does not come into play for the Southfield, not Southfield, Bayville Village Hall. It is privately owned, so they're not bound by the non-supplanting rule. That is actually not a CPA law so much as it's Mass General Government Law, Mass MGL, that you can't do that in government.
The planting was, if they already have a project or already started it.
If they've already started, if they already have funding for it lined up, or all of those rules that apply to government projects.
We could do that for Bayville.
If they had money and they had, they had it in the account, and they were ready to fund it, we still could fund it. Right? But they have a whole nother set of
Yeah.
bigger problems than
Yes.
supplementing as far as finance. I shouldn't say problems, different set of review to the committee.
Challenges.
But I just want to be sure, because I had brought that up.
Thank you, Freddie. Yeah, and it's funny, another one of those things, it reads through really clearly in the act itself, and then the lawyers get to it and. I don't know. Anyhow, annual report.
Wait, you still have to vote on them.
Oh, minutes, excuse me.
That's me, I'm sorry.
Is there a motion to approve the minutes as amended? And is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Unanimous?
Or did you notice the time Lisa left at 9:30? Lisa left at 9:30. I know, I noticed that.
Oh, boy. So Betsy.
That's not good on the last day.
I'm hopeful that you were paying attention to the,
It's 9:28, she left.
no, the Zoom waiting room. Were you?
Yes, I was checking it and nobody raised their
I reminded myself before the meeting, remember, ask if there's public,
Yeah, no worries.
the hybrid format is,
There's not one little hand the whole night.
okay.
How many were in the audience?
At the most, it was 6 and then it's dropped down to 3.
Well, to the three remaining, I apologize for not soliciting. I'm not used to the hybrid format. It's,
That's all right.
Okay, so now we're at the, our annual report. So, Freddie. Our annual report.
That's it. I wrote it. I sent it to you and that was the last. Oh, you didn't send it out. I
No,
didn't send it out.
You wanted to see it and then I was. Gonna send
Okay.
it to
Should talk about that next meeting.
Yeah,
Right.
we
I know,
haven't had a chance to read it, so, let's,
No, nobody's fault.
yeah, we'll discuss it next
After the
meeting.
meeting.
Yeah.
No one's at blame for anything. I will send that out tonight.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Luckily, we have so many meetings coming up to review that. Yeah.
And it was actually better than we thought, because when was it due? The 12th?
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
When we're meeting Thursday,
yes,
Thursday.
a week.
Thursday, the 8th,
And then the 24th after that.
and then the 24th after.
And we'll be finding out where and when and how and letting you know.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, unless anyone else has any other business of the CPC they'd like to bring up, somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
That's their second.
Second.
And all those in favor? Fantastic. All right, thank you very much, everyone. We managed to get through it all.
That's a lot.